For years, drill music has featured stammering drums and smooth 808s. Whether it's Chicago, London, or even Brooklyn style, they all tend to share the same characteristics, but now there's a new drill sound that's shaking it all up. This new genre is sometimes called sample drill, and it's rising up from a totally different New York City borough, the Bronx. Over the last several months, there have been numerous examples, including B-Love's If You Know You Know, K-Flock's Being Honest, and DThang's Talk Facts. But just who came up with this style in the first place? And why is the answer to that question DThang? I mean, at least according to him, that is. If you want to find out the truth, then keep watching our newest episode of Before They Were Famous that explores the career of one of today's hottest artists. DThang was born on September 19, 2002 in the New York City neighborhood of the Bronx. He grew up in the River Park Towers complex, which features 4 buildings, 2 with 38 stories and 2 with 44 stories. In fact, by the time these buildings were completed in 1975, they were officially the tallest buildings in the entire borough.
Where did you grow up in New York?
The Bronx.
The Bronx?
Yeah.
So what's the best spots to eat in the Bronx? You know, you gotta recommend people.
We don't really eat in the Bronx, feel me? If I want to go get some Spanish food or something, go to the I Block. No, real, you feel me? I go to Harlem, eat, feel me? Like that. Well, I don't really eat in the Bronx. Right. Unless it's McDonald's or something.
DThang grew up in proximity to a few other young men that would go on to become equally big names in the genre of Bronx drill. I'm talking about the likes of Dougie B, B-Lovee, and K-Flock.
Ain't related to me.
Like Ice did this, sonny. Can't wait to see Auntie now. Huh. Just gonna learn today, I ain't gonna lie. So stop playing with me, bro. Gangsta, bro. Stop playing with me in they raps, bro. For real.
Now, if you want this inside track on the kind of hustling activities that DThang would get up to with his River Park crew, well, I don't have the details on that stuff for you. My man knows better than to speak openly about all that. But needless to say, much like his contemporaries and friends, DThang established a name for himself in the Bronx as a mover and shaker long before he ever considered becoming a musician.
They don't really know, like I don't really want to like feel me. It's RPT, you heard? Heard Richmond Plaza Thugs, they don't know. They don't know. Chill, they don't know, I ain't gonna lie.
Actually, if I'm being totally honest, I don't really think DThang ever considered music as a viable career choice until late last year. Why do I think that? Well, because he basically said so himself.
Real quick, let me know where you from, you know what I'm saying? How we first got started in this music stuff.
Like, what you mean?
Like how we first got started in the music, you know what I'm saying? Like
me personally?
Yeah, you. Were you here with me?
Yeah, when I was like a year ago, like when I really wanted to do music, it was like a year ago when I first dropped like Caution.
Prior to stepping foot into a recording booth for the first time in the summer of 2020 and knocking a home run right out of the park with Caution, DThang claims that he never messed with the music game before. Not only that, but according to him, he wasn't even a fan of music in the first place, having not listened to much of it even as a kid. You know those people that just never listen to music? Yeah, he became a musician. Funny how that works.
Who do you feel like were your biggest inspirations when it came to like starting the music stuff? Like who were you listening to kind of coming up and kind of drawing the inspirations from before you start making music?
I wasn't really into music. I wasn't into music that much. I used to listen to my older. I ain't really know about a lot. Like I didn't know about a lot of people. I didn't know about a lot of like. Feel me?
I mean, heck, he didn't even know that his name DThang, a nickname given to him by a buddy, was inspired by a Chicago drill artist by the same name, the brother of Lil Durk, and a man who would sadly lose his life just this past year.
My son, he gave me the name. He fake was naming all of us, but I ain't know like he was naming us over like the Chicago like that. I ain't know that. After I told him like years after I got my name in Shamlin, so I'm like, what the f***? Why you gave me that name? He was like, cuz Chicago and we're the gang. I was like, oh, you got me damn. Yeah, that's what he said, but he gave it to me and shit.
But once Caution dropped, the fan response totally overwhelmed DThang, and he quickly realized that he had to move different and start leveling up if he really wanted to turn this into a viable career choice. So here's the thing about, well, DThang. He might be grouped into the rest of the Bronx drill scene, but as far as he's concerned, he's not only different, he started the whole damn movement himself. Well, maybe not by himself.
You started Bronx drill.
I started it. I can't say I started it. Free my all my friends, they locked up right now. Free my hearts. We started this. When we started, that's when everybody, the whole Bronx. I'm the reason the whole Bronx lit right now. Gangsta.
We stamped that.
for sure.
Alongside some friends from River Park like fellow rapper Bando, as well as a few others who DThang says are all locked up right now, this young man claims to have invented the sound and technique that would eventually become a mainstay in Bronx drill. Is he right? Well, to be honest, the validity of that statement is hard to accurately determine. Bronx drill sound began with the rapper Ron Suno, who started crafting drill beats back in 2013 when he was only 13 years old. It would take a number of years for his style to catch on and gain an online audience. In 2019, he had dropped the hit song Pinocchio and put his new genre on the map for the very first time. That's a good year or so before other artists like B-Lovee, K-Flock, and yes, even DThang would begin releasing music. By DThang's own admission, Caution was his very first track, and that song didn't see release until the summer of 2020, or about 10 months after Suno's single. Whether or not DThang is the true originator of the Bronx drill sound, it's hard to argue that he hasn't mastered it. After releasing Caution, he followed it up with tracks like Drama and GZ Bop, the latter of which would go on to become his biggest solo single to date with over 1.3 million views on YouTube alone. What's his secret to success? Well, one thing that sets DThang apart from the rest in his field is how he's brought his entire crew along the way for every step of his journey.
Who I came with, like, he gonna be making my beats. Like every song that I did on this album, he made that beat.
Right.
Every like stuff like that. Like that's what I'm trying to have. Like person that was with me came from the bottom. He made every beat on my album.
That's a great friend with some real talent who definitely knows how to delegate. With the advice and support from some of these same friends, DThang is beginning to mess around with genres outside of drill music. But for the most part, he plans on sticking with what's working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't blame him. Still, my man is always tinkering with his skills and abilities, getting ready to unleash different styles upon his listening audience should the demand for him to do so increase.
Have you begun working on anything outside of drill? Have you been kind of experimenting with your sound?
Yeah. Yes.
That
people in my circle, they love when it, I don't be like when I do it, but people in my circle, they love when I do it. They always tell me, just keep doing that, bro. Just keep getting in that bag. Keep getting that bag. So make you different from everybody else. So make you different, bro. You could do all that. Just be doing it sometimes. Make them happy.
With it being so early in DThang's career, he's only just now, and I literally mean just days ago, dropped his first long-form project. Get Back Gang was released on Apple Music on October 25th and features a number of tracks including his hit single, Habits. In terms of next steps, DThang plans on moving on to a full-blown mixtape followed by the inevitable debut studio album. As of this moment, he's still independent, but he's willing to sign a contract with a label if the right deal comes around. But even if that doesn't happen, he's more than confident that he continue making it on his own. As for the rest of the story, well, that'll unfold in due time. After all, this is before they were famous. I don't know about you guys, but it seems to me that as popular as both Chicago and UK drill music can be, all anyone wants to talk about these days are the drill beats emerging out of New York, more specifically the Bronx. That is where a trio of close friends that we know as K-Flock, B-Lovee, and Dougie B would spend their childhoods running the block before becoming three of the biggest rap stars in the city with hit tracks like Brotherly Love, T Cardi, and Pop That. Recently, we have taken a close look at the come-ups of both K-Flock and B-Lovee, so now let's investigate the equally intriguing story of their friend Dougie B, the man who had to sit and watch from behind bars as his best friends made it without him. Find out how Dougie B's friends held it down for him after the jump on our newest episode of Before They Were Famous.
That trade. Trade feuds?
Dougie B was born Douglas Johnson in the early 2000s in the New York City neighborhood known as the Bronx. Much like his friends K-Flock and B-Lovee, Dougie B came from such a difficult beginning that it's pretty much a miracle that the man survived to become the success story that he is today. Listen to a bar or two from any Dougie B track and you're bound to hear a reference to how dangerous it was growing up in the Bronx. He spent a lot of time on the block located at East 187th Street known as Sev's Side or Sev Block, a section of town where losing a friend or two was sadly just a part of everyday life. On the more positive side of things, it was his time spent here listening to artists like Chief Keef and Kodak Black that music began to become a part of his life.
I've been listening to that side. Chief Keef, Gunna, Key, Kodak, okay.
Dre, I really listen. I throw my like the lyrics is really that shit really
need.
As a kid, Dougie was spared from having to spend his entire day in this notorious part of the Bronx by being sent off to attend elementary school in the nearby neighborhood of Yonkers, basically a 25-minute bus ride. By the time he was a teenager, however, Dougie would be back to spending most of his time in the Bronx, affiliating himself with local crews like the Mac Balla family. Despite his affiliations, it was most likely the strength of his close-knit friendships that helped him get through what must have been one of the most difficult times of his life. At the age of 15, his father passed away in front of him from an epileptic seizure. After this tragedy, it was K-Flock who stuck by his friend to help him get through what had happened. Dougie B would eventually return the favor by helping kick off K-Flock's musical journey, but it was B-Love who would begin dabbling with songwriting before anyone else. Once B-Love began writing and recording his own music, Dougie B joined in. When Dougie discovered how much fun the gig was, he convinced K-Flock to join as well.
We wasn't making drill music like.
Right, but back then drill was kind of around, but it was it wasn't really prominent.
Like, we was listening to heavy Chicago.
Like Chicago drill,
like,
Verbo, those type of guys. Yeah.
This when Brooklyn drill was fake popping, like they started coming out with it for me around that time. But we wasn't making drill music, like we was making regular music.
But as much fun as these boys were having making music, hustling on the streets kept gobbling up most of their time. Eventually, music more or less fell by the wayside again as everyday life began to take priority. Then in 2019, both K-Flock and Dougie B would find themselves locked up. How exactly both K-Flock and Dougie B wound up behind bars is unclear, but there are rumors online, so I figured I'd let you guys in on what the web told me because it's not like anybody on the internet has lied before, right? According to the ingenious folks over in Reddit land, Dougie B earned himself about a year in prison for stealing the chain off of another up-and-coming Bronx rapper, PNBJ.
No, I put up a fight for my chain. I put up a fight, and the I was with did not do shit. I was with didn't do shit. They watched me get beat up.
According to a man apparently in the know, Jay and K-Flock grew up together and were close friends. Meanwhile, Dougie was close to K, but not having grown up directly on the same block. He wasn't buddies with Jay. Long story short, Jay blew up as a rapper before anyone else, and then when he was back home having something of a party with all his buddies, Dougie showed up and made off with Jay's chain.
My flockers is taking your chain. He even said it, you dickhead. My flockers is taking your chain, you stupid.
Now, according to this same Redditor, that's how Dougie wound up behind bars for close to a year. Now, that sounds like an awful long time to be locked up for a petty theft such as that, but if Dougie had some priors, which, if we're being honest, he probably did, then the sentence could have been compounded. And that, my friends, is how Dougie B found himself behind bars at the same time as K-Flock, just as their friend B-Love began exploding in popularity.
That million views in less than like a
right before I come home, I get like for me, I got to do when I was in some program shit they get let me go on the YouTube shit. I seen this. I'm like, I seen him too. I'm like, nah. It really. I come out though, yo. That's like everybody knows.
Not long after B-Love's career began to flourish, K-Flock got released, and once he emerged from prison, Flock immediately hit the studio alongside Love and began churning out songs like FTO. Now Dougie had two famous friends lighting things up on the outside, and lucky for him, they never forgot about their OG. Dougie B finally finished his prison sentence and was released in summer of 2020. Now that he was a free man and the groundwork for success had been paved by his friends, Dougie B took that sucker and started to run as fast as he could.
You got that new shit, right?
You sent that shit to me, right?
Yo, dog, send that him. Drop that.
He'd released his first single, No More Free Dougie B, a couple months later, and I think you probably have a pretty good idea from the title what that track was about. It was basically a thank you letter to his friends for holding it down for so long without him. At that point, he was calling himself Dougs B, but he'd quickly switch over to Dougie B. One would think for the brand recognition that already came baked in. This trio of buddies then teamed up to drop the hit track Brotherly Love, which would go on to earn over 6 million views under half a year of release. Next, he'd appear on numerous tracks as a featured artist, like That's My Muddy, Geeked, and Pop That, all of which would amass over 1 million views over on YouTube. Then in 2021, he'd release his first mixtape, EOS 700 DOA, which features hit songs like Dealerships, EOS, and his most recent single, Turned, which is currently blowing up on YouTube with nearly 1.5 million views in just over a month's time. Now, it looks like Dougie has recently signed a record deal, but as for who it's exactly with, well, that's a little less clear. It seems like most people's money is on him having joined the Victor Victor worldwide roster, which famously used to represent Pop Smoke.
Meanwhile, we were editing video. Dougie B was signed to Republic Records.
Finally, just so you know, there were also some online rumors circulating that Dougie caught a bullet in the leg this past summer, and some people were even worried that he was paralyzed. Honestly, I can't verify any of that for a fact, but I will say that it's probably cap since Dougie has been dancing on social media posts since then. As for the rest of his story and where his path might take him, well, that's for another time and another place. After all, this is before they were famous. Whether you're willing to acknowledge it or not, New York drill is here to stay, and say what you will about this genre, but it has led to a number of fresh artists making a name for themselves with their own spin on the sound. Now, thanks to a young man known as K-Flock, Bronx drill might be up next, and he's brought his good buddies along with him, B-Lovee and Dougie B. Together, this trio is rejuvenating a musical genre that many felt long ago past its expiration date. And they're accomplishing this monumental task by injecting their music with the type of madcap energy that comes from having spent so much time of their youth hustling the streets of New York City. Want to learn more about the come up of K-Flock? Then keep watching our newest episode of Before They Were Famous.
Why are they saying you a menace?
I don't know. I'll be chilling.
You seem cool.
That's what I'm saying. I'll be chilling. I don't know
You
what they
seem-
talking about.
You seem cool. How do y'all...
K-Flock was born Kevin Perez on April 20th, 2003 in the New York City borough known as the Bronx. This kid is of Dominican descent and is from the former neighborhood of such all-time celebrities as Ralph Lauren, J-Lo, and Stanley Kubrick. Now the Bronx can add Kevin's name to the ever-growing list of self-made success stories that the boroughs helped produce. In a lot of ways, K's rise isn't all that different from a lot of those celebrities I just named. After all, a vast majority of the Bronx's population comes from pretty humble beginnings. Only by clawing and scratching their way out of that borough were these individuals able to achieve the kind of mainstream success that they were looking for. And guess what? That's exactly what K-Flock would wind up doing too. If you've ever listened to any of K's music, then you know that he grew up with his head on a swivel. As a youngster, he took to running with a number of local cliques, and he'd also lose a number of friends along the way in quick succession. It was a difficult time and a violent way of life, perhaps best summed up in the lyrics of his song, Being Honest, where he writes, "Lately I've been feeling alone, but I'm clutching my chrome. Pray to mama I'm gon' make it home. 20 missed calls, I ain't answer the phone. Then I heard JB ain't make it home. They say Flocka, keep up and be strong." Earlier in his life, he had spent time playing sports like baseball and basketball with the hopes of making it professionally, but those dreams quickly came to an end as K fell more and more under the spell of hip-hop.
Boom, up in there, you know the vibes, all type of antics, like ayo, 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 come on.
But here's the thing, early on, K was more of a hype man. Back then, in order to find success and get himself out of the Bronx, K teamed up with a couple of like-minded dudes from the same block, aspiring rappers B-Lovee and Dougie B.
How long have y'all known each other?
Like, oh, we
Oh, so y'all
grew up together. Yeah, because I used to live.
He used to live over
there.
there.
On that side.
Okay.
My mom used to live over there.
Gotcha.
I used to live on Colwyn. So it's like, yeah, I used to go to school over there. You feel me? Yeah, like type shit.
K-Flock has known both of these guys since they were kids. In fact, when Dougie B's father passed away from a seizure when he was only 15, it was K-Flock who was there for his friend every step of the way and got him through that difficult time in his life.
I wasn't really the rapper. It's really the rapper right here. I just came home August.
Okay.
August, I just like something back. I ain't gonna lie. For me, I just like. I was playing with this shit. I was going to my his side right here. For me, going to the studio, playing for me.
Dougie B would eventually return the favor by regularly encouraging his friend to become a rapper along with him, but it wouldn't be until both men found themselves spending time in jail that K-Flock really began to take the idea seriously. While under lock and key, K realized that his only real means of escape from his dangerous life was through music. He once told What You Expect, "When I was locked up, I used to always see videos of my man's recording. Just lit. It's deeper than that. There's more to it, streetwise." My man's in that context is none other than King Von, the man that K-Flock says was another crucial reason he got serious about making music. It was King Von's Chicago drill stylings that inspired K to inject some Bronx style into that genre. Freshly inspired and released from lockup, K-Flock got to work turning his dreams into reality. Hard as it may be to believe now with what his name is all over the place, but K's arrival in the industry didn't take place until after quarantine descended on all of us. And I mean, thank God he arrived when he did, right? His first track dropped in May of 2020 and was titled FTO. Soon afterwards, he'd start making a real name for himself by dropping a string of high-energy singles, racking up hundreds of thousands if not millions of views on collab efforts with B-Lovee. I'm talking tracks like Speed Racing and Op Spotter. That latter of those two singles would go on to earn over 1 million views in under a month. This increased exposure afforded K-Flock a platform to rep for his man Dougie B, who was still locked up, while K-Flock and B-Lovee were popping off. Needless to say, Dougie's buddies sure as hell did not forget about their brother on the inside, as the two dropped as many "No More Free Dougie B" hashtags as they could along their path to fame.
Wait till you come on, we gonna see what I'm booked, for me. I'm booked. Like I'm getting, for me, he telling me like, yo, it's up right now. Like I'm getting for me, telling my mom, like, yo, mom, check K, like, check the YouTube. She like,
you got 1 million views in less than like a
right
month.
before I come home. No, I get like, for me, I got to get, for me, when I was in.
Once Dougie was finally out, the three men teamed up and released their massively successful single, Brotherly Love, which has amassed nearly 6 million views in under 6 months. Ever since these breakthrough tracks, K has been on the rise, and rumors have begun to circulate that music labels have been hitting the man up in search of drill's newest superstar. As of this recording, K-Flock remains independent, but for how long that will remain the case is anyone's guess.
I speak to my fans.
What do you tell them?
Tell them go up. Whatever you doing, you can do it with passion. Go forward. Don't play with this. Give up. Feel me?
Right. Tell them what
I answer my fans, like, because I know how it is. I know how I feel to, for me, like then want to talk to, for me, somebody famous. It's like
gangster.
So like, I want, for me, yeah, somebody going up or something.
In the meantime, it might be best if K-Flock cools it a little bit with his ops talk over on social media. Despite his success, he hasn't left that world behind completely, and to say that there's something of a dark cloud hanging over a whole bunch of his social media conversations would probably be an understatement.
Matter of fact, take a left and go through this. They know somebody over here, bro. Real bro, we out, bro. We out Lori Law. Y'all pissing on my son, Goon Ward, nigga. Y'all bugging, nigga. Where am I, dad, nigga? Y'all bugging, nigga. Nah, they need to come on this live, though. What up, bro? Me and my son, see, I just changed. Dog, he saw me hop out. He said, huh, nothing. That ass over here. I ain't gonna lie, he took light. He got scared. I said, boom, that. Running right to the couch.
Having learned so much from King Von is great, but I think we can all agree that nobody wants K to share his ultimate fate. RIP to the legend King Von. As for what K-Flock's immediate future holds, well, that's a video for another time and another place. After all, this is before they were famous.
Every day I wake up thinking about the graph, every pack selling work. I'm just trying to hold my head. See a op flip a op, I'm just trying to see some red. When they bust, I don't duck, I jump instead. Cause the ops ain't like it, they just want me dead.
Before Lil Tjay would release his highest charting song ever, a feature with Pop Smoke titled Mood Swings. Before Lil Tjay would take on YK Osiris in an impromptu boxing match and release footage of the fight via social media. Before Lil Tjay would have over 190,000 followers on Twitter, 3.9 million followers on Instagram, and almost 2 million subscribers on YouTube at the time of this recording. Oh wait, we just checked, he hit 2 mil. Good for him. In just over 2 years, Lil Tjay, he went from spending his days in a youth detention center to becoming one of the biggest rappers of 2020. After signing with Columbia Records in 2018, he quickly scored 2 platinum hits with Leaked and Brothers. But it was the double platinum effort of FN plus the massive success of his feature with Polo G, Pop Out, that really put Lil Tjay on the map.
This song is inspired from somebody I know, that I was close with, that was for me involved in street activity. He act like he ain't want that life overnight, you know what I'm saying? He just changed up on game.
It should be pretty clear from his prolific output that Tjay has a ferocious drive, and that must have played a huge part in him being named to XXL's freshman class of 2020.
Only 19, I'm experiencing life. Mama said she proud cause my future looking bright. And I ain't took my chances, I ain't talking about no dice. I know I'm on probation, but I'm still gonna keep this pipe. Niggas watching ice.
I'm just waiting for XXL to start making a list on YouTubers. I might even make the cut. But then I'll probably get bumped out for Tommy Craze, and yeah, what is my life? Now, fresh off all these accomplishments, Lil Tjay, he is ready to make another leap, and while his fame might still be newfound, while being a world-famous celebrity, it was always part of Tjay's master plan.
Now, you only been rapping for what?
Like 2 years now.
Yeah, and why did you turn to music? What happened?
I already knew I was gonna go to music. That was like my first career choice. Like I already knew I was gonna be an artist since I was little.
Of course, we'll get into more of that later on in this video. What's going on, guys? It's your boy Michael McCrudden back at it again with an updated look at the come up of Lil Tjay prior to fame. Here for you, of course, before they're famous. Now we're running through the XXL freshman class list, and we've dropped some on Mulatto, and we've also done 24K Golden in the past. But then we were looking at our Lil Tjay video, and in that one, it's not even me. So we decided, well, let's get her done, give her an update, and see how it does. You guys let me know who's next in the comments down below. Hey, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell. Boom! Lil Tjay was born T.O. married on April 30th, 2001 in the South Bronx, New York City. Now we found this baby photo on Facebook, but we can't confirm that this is in fact Lil Tjay, but the kid, he sure does look a whole lot like him. Now as promised, we reached out to Lil Tjay for this video, but yeah, I don't know. We'll just get on with the show. Getting into the nitty gritty, well, he hails from 183rd Street and Ryer Avenue, a block lined with a bodega, a barber shop, a Chinese food joint, and Kingdom Hall for Jehovah's Witnesses. Now Tjay spent his early years getting into fights around here and pulling off petty robberies, which had him landing in a youth detention center by the time he was just 15 years old.
Like anybody from the streets or anybody involved in anything that was ever street activity, no, rule number one is if you get caught, don't tell. It's yours because you was in that life, so that's what you signed up for. Saying that is basically expressing myself through music because somebody had told on me when I did my time.
Tjay was locked up for a little over a year on a robbery charge, but he used the time he was in prison to practice his fundamentals as a rapper. He told Rolling Stone, "It was not fun. It's not nothing that I would want to do again, but I learned a lot from it. I feel like if I wasn't to go to jail, I probably wouldn't be the person I am, because I wouldn't have sat down and wrote those songs, and I never would have been able to focus on what I want to accomplish. It made me open my eyes and stuff like that." Rewinding the clock back a little bit, now growing up Tjay, he always knew that he was made for stardom. Now music had always been a part of his life ever since he was a toddler. The oldest of 3 children, well, Tjay, he grew up listening to his mother's playlist comprised of artists like Michael Jackson and Usher. Now later on in his life, he discovered artists that were more along his own line of taste, like Chris Brown, Drake, and yes, even Justin Bieber. That's right, he told Pitchfork, "I used to just watch Justin Bieber videos and be like, damn, this is gonna be me. I never thought about how I was gonna get there, but I knew it would happen." With influences like that, well, his first dream growing up was to be a singer, not a rapper. But destiny, it had other plans for Tjay. Now by the time he was 7, well, he was writing rhymes with his mother's help, knowing even that early on in his life that practice makes perfect. But growing up in the Bronx, it wasn't easy, and at the age of 13, Tjay was already working the streets and selling weed and lean. What? Lean at 13? I mean, I'm 35 and I still can't find any. Not that I'm looking, I've asked. Just out of curiosity. Anyway, let's move on. By grade 9, he had dropped out of school and then came that year-long stint in Queens Juvenile Detention Center, where instead of just sitting around, well, Tjay, he got hard to work making his dreams come true, writing song after song. Now Tjay, he was motivated not only by being locked up, but because right before he went inside, well, his friend Smelly, he passed away. Now Smelly, he grew up alongside Tjay, and it was a huge reason why the youngster even considered becoming a rapper in the first place.
Smelly dying just made me realize I want better. It made me realize that stuff we was doing for no reason. It was no reason to be doing all the street stuff when there's so many other routes.
One of the tracks that Tjay wrote back then was Resume, which he released on SoundCloud in 2017. Now almost immediately after getting out, at the time, well, Tjay, he barely had any social media presence whatsoever. Now the only platform he used was Facebook, but by his own estimate on the second day of its release, well, Resume, it already had 5,000 listens. Now soon after, it became a viral hit with a homemade video that featured Tjay smoking and hanging out in a small plain apartment. Now the song was the very first piece of music he ever recorded in a studio, and the track, it was so polished it immediately landed him on the radar of Columbia Records. Tjay joined forces with Columbia's other rising star, Polo G, on the Chicago rapper's debut single, Pop Out, which would go on to crack the top 10 of Billboard's Hot R&B Hip Hop Song chart and peak at number 11 on the Hot 100.
Pop Out is crazy.
Pop Out, crazy.
Big record.
About to go 3 times platinum.
That's a great moment, man.
Yeah, definitely.
More recently, Lil Tjay, he dropped his debut studio album, True to Myself, in October of 2019. Now it includes many of his SoundCloud singles along with brand new material featuring the likes of Lil Baby and Lil Wayne, thus completing the extremely rare and coveted Lil Trifecta. Sorry, that was a cheesy joke. Alright, that was a bit of a joke, but something tells me that when these three come together to make music, well, it looks a little bit like this. I find that funny, okay? At least that's what I hope it looks like. What can I say? I'm a kid of the 90s, so sue me. Now, since then, he's also released a 7-song EP titled State of Emergency, and he's been featured on Pop Smoke's posthumous album, Shoot for the Stars, Aim for the Moon. And that's all before being named to XXL's freshman class list of 2020.
I know these niggas, man. I'ma run it up and put them hundreds in the stash. Ooh.
As for the rest of the story, well, we're gonna have to wrap this video up here because this, of course, is before they were famous.
Before becoming the latest in a long line of promising drill rappers to emerge from New York City, Nazir Valenzuela, also known as Nas EBK, was born on July 1st, 2003 in the Bronx, where he grew up around 158th and 3rd Avenue.
Yeah, that's where I'm from the Tjay block, feel me? But that's right there by like Colin. I don't really, feel me, be over there no more. But yeah, right now I just be on the Sav.
Nas began his life as an aspiring basketball player, and in his teenage years, he played for the Eagle Academy School in New York, winning a championship in his freshman year. After that first season, he was recruited by a prep school out in Pennsylvania, which would force him to reclassify as a freshman yet again. Unfortunately, only a few months into this new environment, Nas would find himself in a physical altercation with another student, leading to his expulsion from the school and the eventual dissolution of his dream of becoming a professional basketball player. See? One fight and then hoop dreams are finished. It's crazy. All things considered, it was a pretty tragic turn of events because Nas had enough talent to attend a Division I school. Instead, the street life would come calling around age 15, throwing his whole life into chaos and turmoil for the next few years.
To be honest, I was a good kid, bro. Yeah. My mother, I was a ball player. I was supposed to go D1. I was supposed to do all of that, bro. I was a good kid.
The streets are a vicious cycle that Nas would come close to succumbing to, after getting arrested not just once, but twice. One of the occasions took place only 17 days before his 18th birthday, but got released after posting a $100,000 bail. During this period of his life, you could find Nas hanging around the Cortlandt projects in the Bronx, but he'd eventually migrate away from that area and post up in the block known as Sevside, after getting betrayed and robbed by friends from his former hood.
Controversy, all that extra happened, and then for me, KK seen what's up with my situation or whatever, and for me, like, it's not gonna jack a nigga, they don't do what they do, but regardless, by that time, I already did what I did.
That's where and when he would meet fellow rapper K Flock, someone who would come to play a huge part in his musical success. In the years before he started making music, Nas used his reputation around the hood to build a massive following on social media, and to hear him tell it, he says he already had around 10,000 followers on Instagram well before he ever created his first song. That's what we call platinum in the streets. But once he started hanging around aspiring musicians, Nas recognized something in his own life had to change. He let his more troubling habits fall off and began focusing his efforts on utilizing his social media presence to kickstart a rap career. And while he had absolutely no idea what to expect from this experiment, the last thing he ever imagined would happen would be finding the immediate success that he did. After finally deciding to leave his former ways behind, Nas would transform into Nas EBK, with the EBK standing for Everybody Killer, and channel this madcap energy into something of a more creative outlet, bringing to life the underground YouTube hit Bunny in the Box in June of 2021. At the time he recorded that track, his buddies had just finished up a recording session of their own, and everyone was chilling around in the studio, smoking and getting high. That's when Nas finally decided to shoot his shot after months of refusing to do so despite his friends' insistence. That night he stepped into the booth and he drained it in one attempt.
I don't know, one day I was just in the stew. I was with Suddy and J.O. Bands. Okay. And from we was just in there, and I'm like, you know what, let me just try this. And just getting high and shit, everybody falling asleep.
Once that single racked up about 100,000 views in just 1 week, Nas realized that he had made the right decision. Not only that, but his close friend K Flock would take on the role of becoming his manager, looking to guide him towards new heights. Damn, K Flock was a manager too? From there, Nas would go on to drop further singles like OYK with Set the Trend, as well as solo hits like Rah Rah, Top 5, and Risk Taker, all within the span of only 6 or 7 months. I mean, the dude was prolific to say the least. Now, in terms of his process, Nas says that he's not one to write his own lyrics down before stepping in the booth. Instead, he simply likes to roll himself a joint and then freestyle off the dome, kinda something that Jay-Z and Lil Wayne coined. Now he's sitting back and letting the label and record deals pour in. taking his time with the process to make sure he gets exactly what he wants. He's already turned down offers that have hit as high as $700,000, but Nas recognizes that he can't just sign for the sake of a high number, because that's how you end up losing your rights to everything. It's all about finding the right partnership and balance, and that's what he's holding out for. There was also one point where Nas had turned 18 and was flown out to Chicago by none other than Lil Tjay, who had intentions of signing him to his own label, although things apparently did not go as planned. As successful as his still developing musical career has become, Nas EBK has already started to deal with a series of controversies, more than most artists double his own age in fact. Not only does he have hard feelings for former associates like Sha EK and PJ Glizzy, but one of the biggest beefs is the back and forth that he got into with fellow New York rapper Nas Blicky. After Blicky was allegedly shot in the head, Nas EBK would hop on the Instagram to laugh about the man's precarious predicament, saying things like, "Just give up, stop fighting. Matter of fact, somebody tell me what hospital he in. I'ma go and unplug that right now." Eventually, it would be revealed that the reports on the attack were only half true. I mean, yes, Blicky had been shot, but he sustained 3 wounds in the back and the leg, just not the head. As for what EBK had to say about what happened, Blicky would respond by implying that he doesn't know EBK from a hole in the wall, while promising that if they were ever to meet face to face, there would be repercussions.
You see that? I bet you he'll run for his life. Slap the shit out of him. Trust me, no weapon, just beat the shit out of this nigga.
I don't know about these drill kids, man. They're like 10 years younger than me, and I don't even really want smoke with them, man. These kids are taking it too far these days. And you know, not that EBK is the kind to ever sweat a little bit of trash talk. I mean, after all, the man basically made a living off of it. Plus, there's just too many other good things going on in his life right now for him to sweat the little things. Like, say, getting gifted a custom-made glittering watch by New York designer Oscar Stone from his very successful girlfriend and singer Jada Kingdom. The timepiece is believed to be worth somewhere in the vicinity of $20,000, leading Nas to respond to his boo with a heartfelt post on Instagram promising to make her life his permanent one. These two met behind the scenes during an interview with The Talk of Town involving Dougie B and Asian Doll, and immediately hit it off. And while they haven't dropped yet, Nas promises that these two will be releasing a few collaborative singles, some of which are going to be pure fire. It's almost like the drill Beyonce and Jay-Z. In fact, Nas can even see himself stretching his vocal muscles a little bit by singing in a few up-and-coming releases to shake things up and kick off a more melodic phase to his career, as opposed to staying focused on straight-up drill. So will his relationship with Jada Kingdom stand the test of time like Nas EBK promises it will? And when exactly will we get a Nas debut album? Even a mixtape for that matter? I mean, these are all questions that require answers, but with this young former baller only being a little more than a year into his career, we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer to find out exactly what happens. I mean, after all, this is before they were famous.
I'm a kid on a grown man body, you know, I'm working hard. Trying to get my mom out of here.
Before Buba Savage would become one of the youngest hip-hop performers ever, he was born Boubacar Diallo on October 17th, 2006 in Conakry, Guinea. That's where Diallo would spend the first decade of his life growing up in an Islamic family in West Africa, where he learned to appreciate hot sauce as a go-to condiment and got pretty good at basketball and soccer to boot. Unfortunately, he was a little less interested in reading every single page of the Quran during class hours, and when he did make the mistake of falling asleep, his teachers would ensure he regretted it by whipping his hand with a wire coat hanger. Yeah, they don't play in those West Africa schools. You think you got it hard here? Slap your hand if you fall asleep.
I can hit you with like a wire. Wake up.
Really?
Shit hard.
My reader, yeah, used to do that with his keys. He used to hit me with his keys, you know?
Yeah,
it wasn't cool.
I don't got no marks no more thing. See?
That's from the whips?
Then in 2016, he and his siblings left their mom behind and immigrated to the United States, settling in New York City, more specifically, Cortlandt Avenue in the Bronx to live with their father. At the time of this arrival in North America, Diallo couldn't speak a single word of English, so he quickly integrated himself in not only the city's culture, but his new stepfamily as well. And within 2 years, he was speaking the language fluently.
I wasn't really talking to people when I first went to school.
Word.
I didn't know no English, started learning from me.
That's so crazy to me because it's like a couple of years later, you just turned into like a star. Like, isn't that the craziest thing?
Facts. You just gotta wait your turn, you feel me?
Now, normally I spend a little bit longer on one of these videos telling you about a celebrity's childhood, but with Diallo, that's gonna be a little bit more difficult because his childhood and rap career intersect so quickly. After spending the first couple of years in Cortland selling candy on the streets while listening to New York-bred artists like Sheck West and A Boogie with the Hoodie, Diallo would adopt the name of Buba Savage and hit up a friend's custom-made booth inside his very own apartment building where he recorded his earliest songs.
I came upstairs after I was done selling candy. I went upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
We started rapping, you feel me? I said it was dumb funny. Still got the video.
It would take a few attempts to get comfortable, but eventually Buba hit pay dirt when he dropped his very first hit single titled I'm a Savage at only 12 years old. And let's just say, from that point forward, he was not selling candy anymore.
After you dropped that one record, did you go back to selling candy or you was
Hell no. I stopped selling candy. I told my mother and them, yo, I gotta stop selling candy because for me.
Almost immediately after dropping that track, this pre-adolescent rapper would go viral and turn himself into a local sensation at school, where teachers began keeping a closer eye on him, and everywhere he went, other kids would shout out his name. Kinda sounds like the things hip-hop dreams are made of. Like at only 12 years old, you're a celebrity around your school. I don't know, most people can't even fathom something like that, so shout out to Buba. But as much as the kids at school may have been jacking his music, back at home, his dad was less sure about his young son's sudden fame. In fact, it would take a conversation with a couple of old heads from his block who recognized Buba's talent to change his father's mind. You know how those African parents be.
I came in the crib one day, started pressing me about it. And that's when I ran back outside to go grab those two guys, feel me, Cisco and Ray Billy.
To let him know, like...
Came back upstairs with them so they could talk to my pops, so they could let them know.
Like,
so
you
they could let them know
straight,
what's
like
up.
And really, how could Pops not come around? I mean, after all, Buba's talent was so undeniable, not to mention novel, that he almost instantaneously received cosigns from big-name artists like Lil Uzi Vert, his idol A Boogie with the Hoodie, and even Rihanna. Like Riri? Like Fenty Sap, like the girl that used to make Pon de Replay and Disturbias and stuff. I don't know if she still makes music, but anyways, cosign from Rihanna? I don't know. Your life is made, bro.
I saw a picture of you and Rihanna. She was hugging
It was
her.
an A$AP Rocky show, so I saw that, you know, I'm a fan of Rihanna. I'm like, hi. Can I take a picture with you before she leaves? She's like, yeah. So, you know, I'm a small kid. I know what's gonna go viral and what's not gonna go viral.
And before he knew it, Buba Savage would be associating himself with some of those talented artists as well. I still can't get over this. Rihanna? I should have started rapping at 12 years old too. Buba Savage's two earliest releases, Me and I'm a Savage, were co-written alongside an OG from his block. But afterwards, he began punching in and freestyling the vast majority of his music over the next year, including his follow-up singles like Savage Talk and Clout. Then, in 2019, Buba would have another massive hit on his hands, with a collaborative track alongside Kenny Beats titled Bust It Down. Shortly thereafter, Savage hit meme status not once, but twice. First, when he was caught acting every bit his age, terrified at the prospect of riding an amusement park roller coaster. Which, I don't know, it's kind of unfair, man. He's a kid, not all of us like, especially black people. We are not roller coaster people, man.
Oh, please!
Sorry, it's going again.
Oh, no! Yo, get me out! Get me out! I'm not doing this! Stop! Yo! Miss!
Yo, we going to
Excuse me, no!
And next, when he was performing alongside A$AP Rocky for Yams Day, only to get picked up by his co-star and thrown directly into the crowd. Soon after that, the pandemic hit and Buba had to pump the brakes a little bit. For the next while, he wouldn't head outside all that much, like all of us during that time, and instead spent most of his days playing Fortnite alongside his little brother in the crib. But stay-at-home orders wouldn't last forever, and by the time that was all over and done with, Buba Savage was ready to level up once again. Not only would Savage be blessed with the chance to appear alongside his idol A Boogie with the Hoodie in a music video for his 2021 single, Wanna Hate, but later that year, he'd earn his opportunity to be signed to Boogie's Highbridge, the label as well. Ever since Buba began enacting his master plan to become the GOAT, not only is he keeping his music career alive by inching his way ever closer to his debut project tentatively titled It's Amazing, but he's also setting his sights on becoming an actor. Most importantly, after teaming up with Highbridge, Buba is getting a first-hand taste of how massive success can totally transform the narrative of his life, and he's now determined to move his entire family out of the crib, which, considering this dude has over a dozen siblings on his father's side alone, is a massive undertaking. Since signing his deal, Buba has helped Highbridge launch Heavy, a subsidiary that features himself alongside fellow rapper Woody HBTL, while also still finding the time to drop new singles like Mentioning Me, as well as Fallout alongside Sha EK and Kidnap Who, Part 2 featuring CJ Goon. All of these hit songs have helped ensure Buba Savage hasn't simply become a one-hit wonder and a childhood novelty act. Instead, he's grown into one of hip-hop's most talented and well-rounded artists, and his productivity has increased too. These days, Buba Savage is dropping at least one new song a month, and oftentimes two. Now, all we need to do is lock him in a booth and get him to commit to his debut project, because as of right now, we're still waiting on an official release date. You know how fans can get when they don't get a release date. But I mean, hey, when you're looking to give something the title of It's Amazing, you better deliver. Something I'm sure that Savage is no doubt well aware of. So where will his career go next from here? And will we one day be looking back at Buba Savage as one of the all-time greats? Well, I mean, only time will tell.
So when you was like, I was bored in there, bro. Word of my mother, bro. All we had was music appreciation and recreation time for like an hour, buddy.
Before Yus Gz would become the next up-and-coming Bronx drill rapper to keep your eye on, he was born Yusuf Doumbouya in Brooklyn, New York on September 19th, 2003. A first-generation immigrant from the Ivory Coast of Africa, Yus grew up a practitioner of the Church of Islam and would visit his home continent often as a kid.
What was it like the difference from being in Africa and being out here?
It's a big difference, man.
Yeah?
It's too much that we got out here that they don't got out there, feel me?
But faith wouldn't keep him off the streets. And after moving from his original neighborhood to Mott Haven in the Bronx around the age of 6 or 7, Yus would have to grow up fast, joining the local gang affiliation known as YGs, one that is known for having beef with nearby rival ops, the OGs, from Sev's side, the neighborhood where drill rapper K-Flock is from. But what we do know is that his mother, having immigrated from the Ivory Coast, doesn't speak a word of English. Otherwise, he says that the earliest years of his childhood were fairly uneventful, and it wasn't until that he smoked his first blunt at the age of 14 that things began to go a little sideways.
We was just little kids, just, feel me, little African kids, chilling, going to school, coming back. I wasn't really doing nothing as a little kid, feel me? But when I got a little older, that's when when I first smoked that first blunt.
Soon enough, Yus found himself kicking in store windows and taking part in other stupid things like that. Unsurprisingly, this would lead him to spending not inconsiderate amount of time in juvenile hall, somewhere around 18 months to be exact. For a while, Yus refused to speak about what wound up putting him behind bars in the first place, but he'd eventually reveal to P Films that he was caught and charged with the crime of burglary.
What did you get? What you went away for?
Burglary, my brother. I was struggling as a young motherfucker.
Yeah.
Keeping it a buck, word of my mother. Like my mom, feel me, my mom ain't really have it. Used to kick in stores, all that, word of my mother.
As it turns out, being locked up could have been the very best thing that ever happened to him, at least at that time. While sitting around and killing time off his sentence, Yus wound up taking up some music appreciation courses that were provided by the state. He discovered a passion not for rapping, but for singing.
Before drill, I was doing singing, like, I ain't gonna lie, I was trash, bro.
You was a singer?
Nah, hell
no. You just used
I
to
was not jacking, I was a singer.
The only problem was he wasn't convinced his voice was all that solid. So this wannabe artist wound up switching things up after he got out and started working on drill records instead. That singer to drill line pipeline is a real thing, ladies and gentlemen. Yus Gz only just started dropping music more or less in the past calendar year. As a kid, he used to love to listen to artists like Chief Keef, LA Capone, as well as a bunch of other Chicago drill rappers. So once he was a free man, Yus booked his first studio session and kicked off his career with the release of a series of underground tracks on SoundCloud, with titles like Warning, Purge, and Up It. Now those early releases didn't find much of an audience, but another brief stint in lockup, Yus Gz would return home in June of 2021 to drop his first music video for the track Warzone. That vid would pull in some considerable numbers, and only a couple months later, he'd have his first massive viral hit on his hands with Deadlocks, which would quickly rack up over 2 million views. After producing a few more music videos and accumulating millions more in views, Yus Gz started calling himself the face of the Bronx, and he meant it too. I mean, not only was he calling himself that, he created a whole song to go along with it as well.
Why is that your favorite song?
Because
Because why? But be honest. You're the face of the Bronx.
Yeah, bro. That's the reason why I'm the face of the Bronx, bro.
The way that Yus looks at it, he may not have been the first person to create Bronx drill, but after coming home from juvie, he still managed to take the whole scene over in just 6 months. It is a persuasive argument, but as you might imagine, it also ruffled a few feathers of other Bronx drill artists who considered themselves the more appropriate holder of that title. I'm talking about guys like Sha EK, a member of the OGs who didn't have a problem with Yus until he started going by that name. And of course, Sha EK isn't the only rapper that Yus Gz is beefing with. He's been having a back and forth with K-Flock since day one of his career, leading to Yus celebrating K's eventual arrest on murder charges just a few months ago.
K-Flock, bye-bye. Bye, K-Flock. K-Flock, you're fucking stupid. Stupid. Face of the Bronx, I heard. We about to go up crazy, I heard. Yo, Nesty. You know the vibes, my brother. Nesty told Sally, I got Becky. You know the vibes.
Then there's Nas EBK, another promising drill artist who took dissing his ops to the next level when he leaked all of Yus's personal info, including his social insurance number online. But Nas didn't stop there. He also ended up using that information to enlist Yus in the Navy and posted the entire process on his Instagram story.
He was not in the streets, man. Nas EBK be fooling people out here. You see, one thing I don't like about people don't keep it a buck.
You know when you get a friend and they, sign you up for some like dating site for a preference that doesn't really align with you, and then he gets a bunch of emails? Yeah, it's like that, except with your ops. As much of a nuisance as that no doubt was for Yus, to be honest, he had bigger problems to deal with at the time. Look, at this point, we all know that being a drill rapper in the Bronx is about as dangerous as a profession as it gets. In fact, many of his fans originally believed that Yus learned that lesson the hard way after being shot in his chest early on in his career, an event that they assumed led to his trademark Batman-like delivery. But to hear Yus tell it, that whole gunshot wound to the chest thing is cap.
Did you feel like you had to kind of like start moving different, like protecting yourself more, just trying to stay away, focus on what you got to do?
Yeah, type.
Yeah.
Gotta be more on my P's and Q's, man.
Well, one may have been, but what happened next was not. Not long after denying having ever been shot, more rumors started flying around that Yus caught a bullet once again in an attack in early 2022. And as it turns out, this time it was true. On March 25th, 2002, Yus was hanging around East 144th Street early in the morning when he was ambushed and shot multiple times, once in the back and once in the butt. Thankfully, Yus was rushed to Lincoln Medical Center for treatment, where he was able to make a full recovery. Of course, that didn't stop the rumor mill from proclaiming his death, but Yus made sure to hop on Instagram as soon as possible to let everybody know that he was still alive and kicking. After it all went down, Yus refused to cooperate with police when they asked for help in figuring out who attacked him. Instead, he got right back to the studio and has been steadily releasing new music and videos all year. I mean, this dude got shot twice and he never skipped a month. I mean, kudos to this man. Instead, he'd release new tracks with titles like Dirty Dior, African Demons, and Warzone Part 2. Now, Yus is fielding record labels left and right while turning down deals reportedly worth over $1 million and putting together his debut project, which should hopefully drop sometime before the end of the year. And while there are certainly an endless amount of young drill rappers competing to be the face of the Bronx, Yus Gz still finds himself in the position to earn that title by sheer force of will. The only question is, once the dust finally settles on the Bronx drill genre, years or decades from now, will we look back and concede that Yus Gz really was the face of the Bronx? Well, we're just gonna have to wait and see. I mean, after all, this is before they were famous. Before Spaz Drilly would become one of the deadliest drill rappers of all time, he was born to Boo Harris sometime in the year 2001. He grew up on the G-side neighborhood of the Bronx, which may be a small place relatively speaking, but it sure does have a ton of violent gangs occupying its streets. I mean, after all, everyone from the Bloods to the Crips to the YGs claim a piece of turf somewhere in that area. It was on these tension-filled streets that Taboo began going by his earliest nickname, Spaz Jet, while repping the Bloodhound Brims, a blood set that operates under the New York Brim Army. Back in the not-so-distant past, the Bloodhound Brims were one of the most vicious gangs in the city, but in 2019, they'd see a number of their members convicted on charges of racketeering, drugs, and weapons charges. Spaz joined their ranks sometime shortly before that, around the age of 17, after already having earned himself a reputation as a hothead around G-side, someone willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. When his good friend Dumb Out, aka Damian Gilbert, who Spaz not only grew up alongside, but also reportedly once jumped Lil Tjay with, invited him to officially become part of the Brims, Spaz was only all too happy to sign up. Unfortunately, shortly thereafter, Damian was tragically stabbed to death at a Memorial Day cookout in 2018, after getting into an argument with a rival op over a game.
NYPD from the 52nd precinct say that's when they found the 18-year-old man who had been stabbed in the chest. He was rushed to Montefiore Hospital with life-threatening injuries and died a short while later.
It was after his good friend's passing that Spaz broke away from the Bloodhound Brims to start his own crew in Damian's honor. He called this new set Drillies, and they'd later cross over with the YGs to form the super gang, the Drilly Gz. You know, kind of like when Chris Cornell came together with discarded members of Rage Against the Machine to form Audio Slave, only, you know, a little bit more violent. Spaz's original intent for the Drilly Gz was to have them functioning as a music collective, not a gang. At least that's the story he always went with, when in reality, he probably was just using the cover of music to legitimize his less than legal activities. In fact, soon after their formation, the cops almost immediately classified the Drilly Gz as a street gang, because of the record a mile wide that they had in regards to Spaz's former criminal activities and associations. It was around the formation of the Drilly gang that Spaz began releasing music for the first time as well. He dropped a few tracks in the late 2010s with names like Ready or Not and Get Back. but it wouldn't be until his 2020 single, Bunny Hop, that he really left a mark on the industry. For those of you keeping track at home, that means this dude dropped his first big hit months before other artists like Sha EK, K-Flock, and B-Lovee would release their first singles. Of course, with all that bad blood out there in the Bronx streets, it didn't take all that long for these dudes to start dissing one another. For instance, Spaz dropped a track titled Op Spotter in 2020, which went after all the Drilly gang's perceived enemies, including K-Flock and B-Lovee, who would themselves hit back with a remix of the same track. In the remix version, there were lyrics like, "Don't bunny hop, you get shot on the spot," and all too soon, those violent words would turn into deadly action. In July of 2020, a young man who went by the name of James Rivera was shot and killed on East Gun Hill Road in the Bronx. An alleged Crip and DOA member, local police were immediately suspicious that James's death was a result of gang violence and retaliation. Reports would reveal in the moments leading up to his death that Rivera was arguing with 3 individuals before shots rang out. Over a dozen bullets were fired, and the police reportedly even ran out of evidence markers because there were so many shell casings littered across the ground once they arrived on the scene. It wasn't immediately clear who had perpetrated the crime, and it would remain that way for a couple of weeks. Then, in August, the NYPD announced that they had arrested Spaz Drilly and charged him with the crime. They also arrested 3 other men and charged them with Rivera's murder as well. Following his arrest, we didn't hear much about Spaz outside of the occasional plea by his former associates in the Drilly gang to free Spaz.
You know, you mentioned before that when he got locked up, you had to hold it down. Is that the reason why you felt like you had to rap to kind of carry on the legacy?
Spaz's legacy can't go to waste.
Yeah.
It can't. He really did legendary shit for this. No, feel me? A lot of like DThang made drill rap lit, but Spaz started that. Like,
yeah, kicked the door down.
Then, 2 years later, in August of 2022, 20 other alleged members of the Drilly gang, all of whom had carried out crimes in the community for a period of at least 4 years, were arrested in a massive takedown.
18 guns are off the streets and 20 people are now facing charges in the aftermath of the NYPD's Operation Drilly investigation.
These are the trigger pullers, the very few individuals that make it uncomfortable and downright dangerous for all the great people in our community.
Known as Operation Drilly, after the bust, Spaz was soon welcoming many of his former associates to Rikers Island, where all of them are now awaiting trial on murder and racketeering charges. Other crimes that the Drillys are being charged with include the shooting and death of a young woman named Delilah Vasquez in March of 2021. Delilah didn't have any known gang affiliations, although she was a close friend of the up-and-coming rapper DThang. Her murder was only one of many crimes that the Drilly gang reportedly got up to in 2021, while their leader was locked up. Other charges are said to include injuring 3 innocent bystanders while attacking an op on DeKalb Avenue in June of that year, as well as the attempted murder of a man in a barbershop a few months later in October. And if all this external conflict wasn't already bad enough, the Drillys have also fallen into infighting over the recent months. Only a few months ago, C Drilly would hop on the Instagram to let everyone know he wasn't a Drilly any longer. Why? Because as far as he's concerned, he's now the top Drilly. That's why. C Drilly would then take things a step further by dissing Spaz on Instagram, by saying, respectfully, Spaz is a nobody to me. I don't give a fuck about that. He then listed a bunch of other former associates that he would like to see freed, with Spaz notably not making a cut. Spaz would respond, or at least have someone on the outside to respond for him, by posting a message to Instagram insinuating that C Drilly is not a real Drilly member at all. So it seems like even though he's locked up right now, Spaz is still trying to control the situation and let everyone know that no one else but him is the top member of the Drilly gang. As for how Spaz's trial is going to turn out, I mean, honestly, who knows? By all accounts, it's going to be a very long time before this massive indictment works its way through the US legal system. But Spaz and his former associates are looking at some very serious charges that could equal to some very serious time served, should they come out on the wrong side of things. In fact, if Spaz is convicted on either conspiracy or murder charges, he's probably going to wind up spending his entire life in prison. The question is, after playing a crucial part in kicking off the Bronx drill wave, has it already passed Spaz by? Will he ever get a chance to prove himself again? And better yet, does he even deserve it? We're just gonna have to wait and see. I mean, after all, this has been before they were famous. Before becoming one of the most promising female MCs to emerge out of New York City in a hot minute, Murda B was actually born in late October in the city of Boston, Massachusetts, which means there's a pretty good chance that the B in her name, well, it might stand for Boston. So how did Murda B become the next big thing out of the Sev side, if she's really from Beantown? Well, to hear her tell it, Murda B had herself a boyfriend from that area of New York City, and after meeting his crew, she formed connections and relationships that would last her a lifetime.
I got closer to his mans, and then Jamira,
feel me, see his ex-girlfriend, whatever you want to call her. I got closer to her, and then, feel me, shit just took off from there.
These hookups would pay off in the long run, because back when she was younger, Murda B spent most of her free time expanding her horizons by learning new things. She not only taught herself how to play a wide range of instruments, she also developed a passion for makeup and singing as well. Now, as for how Murda B went from singing to getting involved in drill rap, well, according to her, she did it to prove a point to an ex-boyfriend, someone who liked to fancy himself a pretty spectacular rapper, but then got showed up by his partner when she decided to spit fire in his face.
I did it to prove a point
Yeah.
to my ex-boyfriend. Feel me? He was like, nah, drill rap is my shit. I was like, alright, watch this. Boom. It hit off.
Yeah.
And he, you know what's crazy? He dead texted me today.
He may not have been embarrassed badly enough to quit his own aspirations altogether, but Murda B still left her ex behind in the dust, as her career eventually took off and his continued to stall. Prior to that, Murda B was often encouraged by her friends to pursue the art form in a meaningful way, because they believed that as talented a female rapper as she was, she would have a chance to go all the way.
One of K's mans, Ya Boogie, if you're watching this, he was like, you should start rapping. I'm like, stop it, like I don't do that, feel me? I'm just the girl I'm just a regular female.
Not really believing them, Murda B stepped into the studio to put down a few bars for the very first time, only to discover that the way it made her feel inside was like nothing else she had ever experienced. Now that she had a taste for drill, Murda B was hooked. She started releasing snippets of her new music in the form of trillers, and within a few weeks, her entire life would pull a 180 and totally upend. On the cusp of accomplishing something spectacular, Murda B correctly thought to herself, why stop now? Having proven herself to the streets, Murda B's next step was to prove herself to everybody else. At the end of October in 2022, she dropped her very first single and music video, appropriately titled Introduction. Much to the shock of everyone, that video would go on to earn over 300,000 views in just 2 weeks. When asked how an artist with no previous music can go from 0 to 60 so damn fast, Murda B can only point to the fact that on the thumbnail of the video, her tongue was sticking all the way out, which may have gone a long way towards attracting, well, let's just say a certain type of thirsty audience.
First of all, the thumbnail was me sticking my fucking tongue out. Close. Kalo. Yo, my.
He decided that, or you?
He fucking did that.
Yeah, that was smart.
I ain't do that. Cause I looked like the ill smut. I'm not gonna lie.
Of course, it also helps that the song was catchy as hell to boot. Once it was released and the dust had settled, Murda B wound up crushing her management's expectations for her initial numbers, while also transforming herself into the shocking new face of the Bronx music scene. Recognizing that her moment was now, Murda B would spend the next few weeks dropping one song after another, all of them released through the Raps and Hustles YouTube channel. I'm talking singles like D&D, Naughty Gang, What, and her most recent attraction, New Face of the Sh**. Now, in case you can't tell by some of those track titles, Murda B isn't afraid to speak her mind, nor is she afraid of calling out her ops, which may have some people concerned about her safety. But Murda B promises she's moving accordingly and will not be caught lacking, unlike a bunch of others who may be hating on her thanks to all her success. Even though she's only been around the industry for a comparably minuscule amount of time, Murda B has still managed to work herself into a few tasty rap beefs, the biggest of which is probably her back and forth with the rapper Blockwork. At one point, these two were actually pretty cool with one another, and Murda B was hoping to feature on one of Blockwork's tracks, having known him since around she was 13 years old. So a few months ago, Murda B was invited to participate in a video shoot for one of Blockwork's tracks, but things exactly didn't go as planned when Blockwork got into his usual shtick of smoking dead ops. In particular, a few that Murda B wasn't ready to sign off on.
So feel me, people fall out with each other, whatever. I don't condone nobody smoking on C nobody smoking on J-Rip. So for me, I just like dead that. Yeah. And then today he just decided to suck my dick and fucking say that I was smoking J-Rip. I never said that. Gay son. I made sure you didn't say that in front of my face. Like, that's what he talked about.
Thanks to her association with the Sev side, Murda B wasn't about to stand by as someone dissed what's essentially become her family, so she terminated her association with Blockwork as a result. But as is so often this case in the industry, if one partnership comes to an end, the next is waiting just around the corner. And over recent weeks, Murda B has kicked off a working relationship with the folks over at Sony Music, who came in hot and heavy looking to get in the Murda B's business.
It was beasting, yo. They was beasting. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie though, I knew I was gonna get signed though. Yeah. Low key, cause I'm gonna give credit when it's due. Me and who else? Who else on Raps episodes? Do y'all know? Didi. I'm not gonna lie, us three, we're doing numbers, bro. No cap.
The most exciting part of her entire journey so far, how fast it's happened. Even Murda B, if she was being honest with herself, didn't think her moment would come until summer of 2023. And yet, here we are. The calendar hasn't even flipped from 2022 yet. She's already being put on in a way that she never imagined in her wildest dreams. Speaking of dreams, if Murda B has it her way, then eventually her drill rap career will evolve over to the point where she can return to her original passion for singing. But hey, as of right now, she knows that drill is where the eyeballs are at, and she's not planning on abandoning that genre anytime soon. Outside of new solo music that's on the horizon, Murda B is also working on putting together a few features with artists like Lil Tjay, and maybe, if everything lines up properly, Cardi B. That would be a pretty good feature. I'd love for that to happen.
I don't know if this is true. You might be working with Cardi B. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't know, bro. TV, I don't know. Everything just coming at me.
The most important thing of all is for Murda B to keep being consistent with her drops and releasing new music as often as possible, which, at this point, amounts to damn near one new song each and every week. Crazy pace. Once she's finally finished taking over the United States, she's gonna set her sights on going global. Now, if I had to guess, that's probably when she will circle back around to singing because, let's be honest, as immensely popular as drill rap has become over the past few years, it's still not exactly mainstream. But hey, if anyone has the talent and personality to push drill farther into the public consciousness than ever before, it is Murda B. And as for where her career will ultimately take her, well, you already know what I'm about to say. We're just gonna have to wait and see. After all, this has been before they were famous.
I started making music a couple years ago. Basically, I was doing it with my friends and shit in lunchroom.
C Blu is a promising up-and-coming artist based out of the Bronx who had only just started to release music and work his way up the industry food chain. And something happened that nearly wound up costing him everything. In early 2022, C Blu was accused of shooting a cop during a struggle over the teen's stolen weapon after he was part of what authorities are calling a disorderly crowd gathered outside a building near 3rd Avenue in New York City. Like in most cases, media attention around this arrest would wind up only elevating C Blu higher in the drill rap scene, and a record deal with Interscope would allow this young kid to post bail.
Everything happens for a reason, you know. The facts always come out. Whatever happens in the dark is gonna come to the light, and that's what basically happened.
But is everything as it seems in this case, and is C Blu really to blame for what happened? If you've ever wanted to discover more about this teenager's come up and hear the true story behind his altercation with the authorities, then keep watching our newest episode of Before They're Famous to find out. But before we get into all the details, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications to make sure you never miss a single episode. And without further ado, let's get right into today's story. C Blu was born Carmen Williams in New York City sometime in 2005. This Bronx kid grew up smart, and he says he used to dedicate himself to his education in his early years.
Facts, yeah, I know about school shit still, facts.
Word.
You gotta be smart and shit. Can't just be a dumb thing.
In fact, Blu says that he was especially interested in biochemistry thanks to his love for the Matt Damon film, The Martian, and was even on track to attend college to study science in greater depth. Look at Matt Damon influencing the youth. But then, two things sidetracked him. The first is when he found himself wrapped up in gang-like activities upon becoming a teenager. In fact, he's even pleaded guilty to criminal possession of a weapon for being caught with a firearm at only 14 years old.
Me personally, I grew up good, you know. I had a mom that fed me, but it really depends on how you make your life, really, in the Bronx.
Now, the second thing that sidetracked Blu from his education was much more positive. I'm talking, of course, about his music career. While hanging out with his friends, Blu got hooked on the tracks of rappers like Lil Pump, and soon enough, he was writing down his own lyrics about buying guns and taking on his ops in the Bronx. I mean, that's how everybody's, introduction to music starts, right? Kind of want to get back at your ops, right? Maybe your ops are on the block, maybe they're at the basketball court, maybe they're at the hair salon. Everybody's got ops, you know? You don't have to be a gangster to have ops.
Used to be in school, chilling with my friends and shit, making beats, making songs and shit. And one day, I was like, fuck, take this serious.
After dropping songs with titles like No Ozone Part 2 and Not a Diss, all before the age of 16, Blu would then catch the eye of his old friend K Flock and collaborate with him on What Y'all Wanna Do and Treachy. Unfortunately, shortly thereafter, Flock would find himself arrested in December of 2021 for allegedly shooting a man outside of a Manhattan barbershop. About a month prior to that, Blu had stopped attending in-person classes and began homeschool, after his fame had become too much of a distraction for both himself and the other kids at his original high school. I gotta say, that's like the rap version of getting drafted into the NBA as like a high school kid, you know? Like you can't even go to class because you're so famous. I don't know. Should be everyone's goal. This decision also allowed Blue to better focus on how to break through into the upper echelon of the city's drill scene, something that seemed poised to happen at any moment, right up until the time that C Blu found himself arrested for shooting a cop. On January 18th, 2022, C Blu and a group of others were outside a building in the Bronx, which authorities would characterize as a disorderly gathering. When this group was approached by police, the cops demanded that C Blu remove his pants from his pockets.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Rather than do so, C Blu and the officer Kasim Pennant began to tussle back and forth with one another. During the scuffle, a firearm tucked into Blue's pants was discharged and shot through the rapper's leg, grazing the leg of the officer as well.
That we are endangering the lives of children by allowing children to carry guns that they are using on children.
Both individuals were rushed to St. Barbana's hospital, where they both recovered from relatively minor injuries. C Blu, however, was subsequently placed under arrest. Now, this was not good considering he was already on probation from his earlier firearm charge at the age of 14. In fact, during his arraignment in Bronx Supreme Court, Assistant DA Joseph Maniscalco did his best to paint C Blu as a gun-toting menace to society. During the arraignment, he said, "This defendant has taken to social media and appeared multiple times displaying a firearm that looks similar to the firearm he possessed in the incident." On the opposite side of things, Blue's attorney, Don Florio, would claim that the officers piled on top of her client during the incident. While his weapon was discharged, Blue was not the one who pulled the trigger and was never actually in possession of a weapon.
When they piled on top of him, he became a victim because the gun went off and he was shot in the groin. And when he was shot in the groin, that same bullet went out through his thigh, and that same bullet grazed the police officer in his leg.
She even took things a step further by insinuating that Blue was targeted simply because he was well on his way to becoming a popular rapper. And she further claimed that C Blu's original arrest at 14 was improper because the weapon was found unloaded and only being used for filming a music video. An initial attempted murder charge was eventually downgraded to criminal possession of a weapon, second-degree assault, and other weapons-related charges, all of which C Blu would plead not guilty to. Bronx Supreme Court Justice Dennis Boyle would then set Blue's bond at $2,500. Yeah, $250,000, which he was able to afford thanks to signing a deal with Interscope Records just weeks before this all went down. This turnabout greatly upset many high-up officials, perhaps none more so than the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, who condemned Blue's ability to post bail, stating that New Yorkers should all be outraged that a repeat offender accused of shooting a police officer is today walking free on bond, because judges are precluded from even considering danger to the community, like every other state and our federal courts. It is further proof that our system is failing us. Well, if he wasn't happy about Blue posting bail, I can only imagine how he feels about what came next. The authorities' case really began to fall apart in March of 2022. That's when Bronx Supreme Court Justice Natalia Samaj was assigned to the case, after it was transformed from audit court to family court due to Blue's young age. And this judge wound up seeing things very differently from her predecessor. She took the authorities to task for Blue's arrest, calling their accusations and testimony both unreliable and self-serving. She also cast doubt on the legality of the original search of this teenage artist by suggesting that Blue did everything he could to comply with the officer's demands at the time of the arrest. By May of 2022, all charges against Blue had officially been dropped, and the city was prevented from prosecuting him any further. And while this would be seen as justice to many, others were far less inclined to look at it that way. A statement released to the media by the New York Law Department would read in part, "Just because the city cannot persecute does not mean the individual should not have been carrying an illegal weapon. A weapon that contributed to both him and an officer being shot." As for C Blu, well, as you can probably imagine, he and his representation were thrilled at the outcome. In fact, he'd soon hop on the TikTok to post a video that got his point across without even uttering a single word. Pursuant to family court law, Blue's case was then sealed and further prosecution is no longer possible. Since then, Blue has gone on to release a string of new hit singles with titles like Fresh Home, Stop Dissing, and Drip. He's currently deep into recording his debut EP, and his hope at this still early stage in his career is that he'll be able to earn enough money in the near future to move his mom from out of the hood, where he spent his entire life up until this point. Now, will he be able to achieve this goal? Well, we're gonna have to wait and see. I mean, after all, this is before they were famous.
Before Lil Tjay would become one of the hottest new artists out in New York, dropping tracks like the Justin Bieber sample None of Your Love, which has over 14 million streams on SoundCloud, Resume, which has over 15 mil, and Brothers, which has over 21 million views on YouTube. Before he would get cosigns from Famous Dex, Roddy Ricch, Designer, and collab with YNW Melly and more. Before he would have close to 150k followers on SoundCloud, close to 200k subscribers on YouTube, and almost 550k followers on Instagram at the time of this recording. Lil Tjay has had a monumentally fast rise to fame. But unlike a lot of people in the new era, it wasn't through antics and it wasn't through a label push. It was just through great music and talent alone. At only 17 years old, the kid has accomplished more than most people dream of in their entire lives. After serving a year-long stint in juvenile detention, he decided to take music seriously, and well, after that, a lot happened. What's up, good people out there in the world? I hope you're having one heck of a day, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching this. My name is Jeremy Hecht, aka I don't text back. One of these days I'm gonna come up with a killer pun that's gonna leave you speechless, but for now, here we are on Before They Were Famous, and today I'll be taking you through the life and career of Lil Tjay prior to fame. I've covered other newcomers like YNW Melly and Comethazine, so be sure to check those out after you finish watching this one if you like it, and as always, be sure to let us know in the comments down below who we should cover next. Without any more talking though, let's get into it.
Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell. Boom!
Lil Tjay was born Tion Merritt on 183rd Street in South Bronx, New York on April 30th, 2001. He grew up with his mother and two siblings in an apartment in the Bronx, and when he was still young, his mom went back to college to get her degree. He told Pitchfork that he was a problem child, always getting into fights and committing petty robberies in middle school, but he always managed to get all of his schoolwork done. At home, he was well behaved, never even so much as cursing in front of his mother, but when he would step outside, it was blunts and of course some cursing with his friends on the block. He told Rolling Stone that the neighborhood he grew up in was very diverse, and he even learned some Spanish from his friends. He grew up listening to people like Meek, Rihanna, Rick Ross, and Drake, and he actually met Meek recently, who told Tjay he was a fan of his music. But the Justin Bieber sample on his record None of Your Love wasn't random. He told Pitchfork that he used to watch Justin Bieber videos all the time and think to himself, damn, this is gonna be me. He says he would watch TV seeing the way that artists live, and he would envision himself on that stage. He always felt like he was meant for something bigger than himself. It was artists like Bieber, MJ, and Usher that would later inspire him to sing. He was even nicknamed the Bronx Bieber on Facebook when he first started making music. That's kind of a hard nickname, actually. He says that he was also inspired by kids on Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, watching shows like iCarly and Victorious all the time. He told Pitchfork, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I was really into some childish shit. I got friends that were watching Disney, but they would never tell you. Ariana Grande, that's my wife. The street shit felt forced upon me. The real me was at home watching all of that shit. I'm with you 100%, bro. Tjay, I still go on record saying that High School Musical is the greatest trilogy of all time. I even got to live out my lifelong dream of wanting to be Troy Bolton this year for Halloween. Shout out to my Gabriella. But before I get any weirder, let's get back to Tjay. In 2016, when Tjay was 15, he served close to a year in a youth detention center for a robbery case that he doesn't like to talk about publicly. In jail, he played a lot of spades, but it was also behind bars that he started writing some of his most heartfelt and personal songs. He would sing those songs to other people in jail, even rapping some of them for the correctional officers, and everyone had a positive response, recognizing that he had something special. He had 2 notebooks full of verses from his time behind bars that would later become some of his most successful tracks. He told Rolling Stone in one of his only interviews so far, "It's nothing that I would want to do again, but I learned a lot from it. I feel like if I wasn't to go to jail, I probably wouldn't be the person I am, because I wouldn't have sat down and wrote those songs, and I never would have been able to focus on what I want to accomplish." He also says that he doesn't want anyone who looks up to him to focus on that part of his life. Unlike many people who shy away from the title, he wants to be a role model. He always wanted to have kids look up to him, and now that he has that influence, he wants to make sure he uses it right. He even encourages his fans to stay in school and focus on the important things. And even though he recognized that he wanted to create change for himself in a positive way, When he first got let out, he was still caught up in his old ways and not focusing on anything productive. He was occasionally recording songs on his laptop that he describes as a more traditional rapping style, but he wasn't taking it too seriously yet. But it wasn't until stepping into a recording studio for the first time that he was able to realize a new direction for his music and his life. The first song he ever released was called Don't Gotta Explain with Lil Tjay, but the first song he recorded in his first ever studio session was Resume. The song was much different than the verse-driven bars he had previously recorded on his laptop. When he got into the studio, he was inspired by memories of singing Usher and Michael Jackson as a kid with his mom. And in the heat of the moment, he decided to sing the lyrics he had written down instead of spitting them. And when he played Resume for all of his friends, they all kept telling him, you have to drop that officially online. He did drop the song in 2017, and off of reposts alone, it got close to 5K listens within a day. Everybody I knew posted it at one time, and then I guess just other people from different places started reposting it, and they actually listened to it, and then it just started going crazy. Eventually, it blew up, garnering over 14 million streams. Crazy because for most people, the first song they record in a studio is not a massive hit to that degree. But then again, most people don't ever get 10+ million streams on any of the songs they record. Like he says on his new song Leaked, man, I just came home, now everybody knows me.
You've all heard of Candy Pens, right? Well, if the name doesn't ring a bell, I got a good feeling you've seen them before. Now, Candy Pens was named Best Vaporizer of 2018 by High Times due to its combination of popular technology and flashy design. And Candy Pens, well, they've quickly become the go-to choice for vaping in the hip-hop and rap community. They've got some co-signs from DJ Khaled, Fatboy SSE, Young M.A., and Amber Rose. Even the one and only A$AP Rocky, yeah, he's got his own signature line called the Flacco Jody Collection. Now, Candy Pens has actually made me their YouTube ambassador, the one and only, and they've given me the ability to get you 25% off your entire order. Yeah, there's a link down below. Also use the promo code BTWF25, get some money back, enjoy your vaping. Remember, Candy Pens are for those 18 years and older.
He kept posting songs online, but made sure he waited until each previous release would flatline in terms of growth and views, then he would drop another banger. Record labels started calling after seeing his first few drops do massive numbers online and reaching the top of the SoundCloud charts. On his song Goat, he says, "Independent, but I could have got signed." So initially he was showing up to label meetings with no one but his teenage friends, which was exciting, but also overwhelming for the kid, which I can understand. But it was his song Brother that became even bigger for TJ, with the audio alone gaining over 22 million streams on SoundCloud and the visuals sitting at around the same amount of views on YouTube at the time of this recording. When speaking about the song to Rolling Stone, he says, "I know how to hide my emotions. I can say what's going on and not make you want to feel down. A lot of time I like to sing music that people can relate to, but not necessarily put them in a depressed mood. In Brothers, I'm saying bodies drop all the time, I don't feel nothing. Basically, I'm trying to say I'm bringing the struggle into a more joyful, melodic sound." Speaking of his sound, it has often been compared to fellow New Yorker A Boogie, whose melodic-driven verses without sacrificing his bars has become a staple sound in the newer generation of rap. And although TJ doesn't mind the comparison, he feels like he's beginning to craft his own sound, and in terms of today's rap, he doesn't really relate to the drug-heavy use rap. He's more focused on longevity, and hearing him speak, the kid is actually very grounded, and I have a feeling that he'll be around for a long time in this game. Once music started getting to a level where he was so popular online, it was hard for him to attend school normally. Remember, he was 16 when he started to blow up. I remember I put out a couple of songs at 16 that had maybe a few thousand plays online, and I felt like the man. But I can only imagine if you have 20 million hits. There's no way you'd be able to walk around normally like it's nothing. But TJ says that he is doing homeschooling to finish his degree because it's really important to him to show his younger fans that he's staying on the right path. Early on, he had cosigns from Lil Durk and Famous Dex, who reached out through Instagram, and eventually, he knew a label could take him to the next level. So after initially declining, he ended up hiring a lawyer, going to label meetings, and signing a deal with Columbia Records. In December of 2018, he dropped his first EP, No Comparison, which included the songs Ready for War featuring Y&W Melly and Bad to the Bone, which now has over 1.3 million streams. Now it's time for the part of these videos that I do solely for our female viewers. It's Shoot Your Shot with Lil Tjay. What are your chances at dating the man behind the songs? Although he sings a lot about women, he has never actually had an official relationship, but says that now he's looking for someone who he can rely on and wants someone who is really gonna love him for who he is as a person and not just for the clout and success of his rap moniker. So ladies, if you're watching, shoot your shot in his DMs, you never know. He seems like an emotionally aware guy and he says he only writes about what he's feeling. But just remember, he is only 17 at the time of this recording, so if you're looking not to get yourselves in trouble, ladies, you gotta wait at least a year. Back to the video. He told XXL that one of his standout moments in his career so far was performing in front of a crowd, I don't know how many people, at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. It was great. I liked the response I got from the crowd. Industry was there, it was lit, it was a good experience. The Wells Fargo Center holds 19,500 people, so that had to have been surreal. As for what's next, TJ says he will still be very selective with his releases, saying, if I don't feel like it's a hit, then I don't feel like dropping it. I won't drop an album until it's perfect. A lot of albums got 2 or 3 singles, but the rest is caca. I want every song on it to be a hit. My whole life I wanted more. I didn't get here just to be broke at 28. I have plans, vocal lessons, dance lessons, on some Usher shit. He's been in the studio with LA's own Roddy Ricch and been seen with Famous Dex, Designer, and Jay Critch, and many more artists, so I'm sure we have plenty of new music to look forward to from TJ. He also says another Justin Bieber sample could be in the works, but this time he wants to cover One Less Lonely Girl, which in my humble opinion is one of the most underrated tracks of all time. His rise to fame was pretty fast, so there isn't a crazy long story here on Before They Were Famous, but the guy made good music and people recognized it early. As for the rest of the story, well, you know it because this is Before They Were Famous.
One thing people, think about me that's not true is that I'm just a pretty face.
Rapper and former reality television star DreamDoll was born Tabitha Robinson on February 28, 1992 in the New York City borough of the Bronx, where she was raised by a single mother as the oldest of 5 siblings, after her father was sent to prison to serve a 50-year sentence.
My dad been locked doing 55 years and he basically seeing this happen. He hearing me on the stations in jail and like, yo, this is crazy. That's my daughter.
Tabitha attended high school at Bronx Academy and afterwards she headed off to Westchester College for her post-secondary studies before earning a degree in business management from yet another institution known as Herkimer Community College. Shortly after finishing her education, Tabitha found herself in a relationship with a dude who cheated on her with a woman that was much thicker than her. Now this would prompt Tabitha to get her first boob job at the age of just 21. Kicking off an obsession with plastic surgery that also involved multiple butt injections and would lead to many ups and downs over the next few years, some of which we will get more into towards the end of this story. At first, however, this alteration in her physical appearance would lead to a major boost in Tabitha's confidence, which would see her kicking her ex to the curb and dreaming up some pretty big plans for herself. Around this same period of time, Tabitha began associating with a group of women in the Bronx who called themselves the Doll Gang. Each one of these women came up with a different moniker to go by, and that's when Tabitha started calling herself Dream, because she spent so much effort seducing men simply to gas them up. Having meticulously crafted their alter ego, Dream realized that she could live out Tabitha's life in a much more empowering way, by making men feel like they may have a shot with her when really they never stood a chance. This was a skill she found herself putting to use frequently in her role as a bartender at a popular strip club in Queens known as Starlet's. Everybody knows Starlet's. In fact, it was while working at this very bar that Dream's life would change after meeting Power 105.1's popular radio personality, DJ Self. At this still early stage, Dream hadn't been taking rap music all that seriously. I mean, it was more of a hobby that she and her friends would participate in during downtime in college and for fun.
I never ever thought, this would happen for me because I was rapping in college and that was just freestyles, jumping on songs with the guys from my school.
But now she was looking to transition out of her role working the nightlife and she petitioned DJ Self to give her a chance as an artist. So he told her come back at him with a song and she delivered the very first song that she ever recorded in a professional studio. Everything Nice. DJ Self enjoyed what he heard and signed DreamDoll to his music label, Winnin' Entertainment. Not long after, Dream heard her song all over the speakers in the New York City club Aces, where she started partying alongside DJ Self and Future. Now that is the moment that she realized she found her new calling in life. But before she'd become recognized as hip-hop's newest queen, DreamDoll would establish herself in another field, reality TV. For many of us, DreamDoll might have best been known for her explosive appearance on Love and Hip Hop, but that was far from her first brush with reality TV. In fact, she initially earned herself mainstream attention by appearing on the 16th season of the Bad Girls Club on Oxygen.
What makes me a bad girl is because I really live this life. Like, I drive a pink truck. I'm already popping. My Instagram followers already up. I have a fan base.
During her one-season stint on that series, Tabitha was portrayed as a malicious bully, one who got dragged during the reunion episode because of how entitled she had come across all season.
If you could have took it back, you would have. Yeah, I would have deleted that. I would have kept Love and Hip Hop because it helped my music and it helped me get music listeners.
Today, Dream can barely even think about this period of her life without hating who she was, especially because she was behaving as a poor role model for her 4 younger sisters. Today, when people approach her and tell her about how much they enjoyed her work on that series, she tells them that she wishes she could take it all back. She explained to BET, "I don't want that attached to me at all. I hate bullies. I don't want my sister to think that picking on someone and poking somebody's buttons is okay." The following year, DreamDoll would work hard to reinvent herself by releasing her very first EP titled Life in Plastic. Then, later that same year, she began appearing on season 8 of Love and Hip Hop New York.
Why you took the top off your drink?
There's a little shade. I'm just
Why you
keeping
took
on
the top
point.
off the drink?
I didn't even see that. See, okay, check this out. This is not about you guys right now.
During the course of the season, DreamDoll appeared to be dating Safari Samuels, but she would later admit that it was all put on for the show and that the two of them never really had a relationship to speak of. And while Dream may not have spent all that much time as a reality TV star, she would wind up putting that exposure to good use. She explained the rolling out, "I used reality TV and took advantage of it, but it's just a little harder when it comes to the rap field for some people to separate those two. Sometimes you get judged by the things that you do on reality TV, and they can't give you the correct credit for the music. That's how it is sometimes, but there isn't a battlefield that I can't get through." After spending a couple of years under the bright lights of television, DreamDoll would return to music in September of 2018 with her next EP, Life in Plastic 2. Only a short time beforehand, Dream had signed with District 18 in a joint label venture under the umbrella of RCA Records. They'd then release her sophomore effort, which just so happened to feature a collaboration with Dream's biggest musical inspiration, Lil Kim. These two met over on Instagram, then recorded the track Funeral, which would become a highlight of DreamDoll's entire existence. She explained to BET, "Kim don't collab with no females. People don't get that. Me, I'm upcoming, fresh, I'm new in the industry, and been putting out music less than 2 years. So this is a big win for me. And she helped me gain more respect because she co-signed me." After scratching off one of the biggest items off her bucket list, the good times kept rolling in for Dream, who then signed a new deal with Warner Records in 2021, before dropping her third and seemingly final entry in her EP trilogy, Life in Plastic 3. Featuring the mega hit You Know My Body alongside Capella Gray, DreamDoll's music career finally became her central focus, and a newfound willingness to be entirely open with her ever-growing fan base would lead to entering the most successful period of her life. In June of 2021, DreamDoll would announce to the entire world that she's extremely proud to be bisexual in a skin-bearing, rainbow-colored Instagram post that got sent out to her nearly 5 million Instagram followers. Many of the biggest fans would soon flood her comments with DMs of love and support, prompting DreamDoll to thank everyone who was sending her such good vibes. Only a few days later, DreamDoll would then double down on her announcement when she dropped Tryouts, a single which she openly raps about wanting to sleep with some of the biggest female names in the industry, like Cardi B, The City Girls, and Saweetie. I kinda agree with that song's theme, you know? I'm not saying I'm trying, I'm just saying. I get it. But as positive an experience as coming out was for DreamDoll, not everything in her life has been perfect. And over the past few years, she's had a pretty rough go when it comes to plastic surgery.
I was going through pain for years, and even though people may talk shit about my body, like that shit was hurting me.
To her credit, DreamDoll has been extremely open when it comes to discussing the trials and tribulations that she's gone to get her physical appearance exactly the way she wants it, including peeling back the curtain on the time that she almost died because her body began rejecting injections that had been placed in her, DreamDoll wound up traveling to Colombia to address the issue because she was afraid that the doctors in America would simply want to cut her up to try and fix things. To make a long story short, she had to gain about 40 pounds in extra weight that the doctors then used to replace the injections that were being taken out of her body. It took 4 surgeries to remove the injections, and ever since then, DreamDoll has made a point of discussing what happened to encourage other women to come forward with their own stories and hopefully make the entire process of getting plastic surgery a little bit safer and more transparent. And while her plastic surgery journey has been extremely rough on both her physical and mental, Dream's more than happy with the final result, as are her legion of fans, both men and women. But as for where DreamDoll's career will take her next, well, it's a story for another time and another place. I mean, after all, this is before they were famous.
Hey, you tell your guys I'm cute and that you wanna talk to me, but you got your pride.
Why don't you just say hi, would it kill you?
At the offset of the Chicago drill scene, women like Katie Got Banned, Sasha Go Hard, and Shady were the first to jump on the genre's rapid-fire growth and contributed hugely to why this style of music was so popular in the first place. But when it comes to New York's drill scene, that hasn't really been the case, at least not until now. Over the past year or so, an entirely new wave of women has put this genre on notice, and few have done so more effectively than the woman that we know as Kenzo B. This high school senior grew up freestyling with her brother. You may have heard of him, his name is Bando. But this talented young woman didn't need her brother to help her out on the scene. She did that herself with the release of her hit track, Bump It. All the same, Kenzo B's come up was far from easy, and it even began with her mother giving birth while she was locked up in prison. If you want to learn how one of the internet's most promising up-and-coming rappers got her start, then keep watching our newest episode of Before They Were Famous. Kenzo B was born on March 4th, 2005 in Connecticut. If you're curious about her government name, well, that hasn't been released to the wider world at large as of yet. As for why Connecticut and not the Bronx, that would be because Kenzo was born in lockup while her mother was serving time in prison on an 11-year sentence.
I was fake only born because my mom was doing time up there. So when she came home, so
she was locked up in Connecticut?
Yeah, she was locked up. So I was born and she was locked up. Then I came to the Bronx.
Following her birth, Kenzo would stay with her mom while the two of them spent time living in a halfway house for 3 months. But after those short few months were up, Kenzo was sent to live with her grandmother in Harlem while her mother carried out the rest of her sentence. After finishing her bid, Kenzo's mom would finally return home, pack up her daughter, and move them both to the Bronx. More specifically, the River Park Towers, a particularly violent and dangerous part of town where this talented young kid would spend the next 12 years of her life. As a kid, Kenzo grew up with 2 siblings, both of whom she was close with, and one of whom would turn into the big-time Bronx rapper, Bando, someone she looked so much alike that when they were growing up, everyone seemed to think that they were twins. When they were kids out on the streets, Kenzo says that she was the good one while Bando was always a badass looking to get into all kinds of trouble. But since these two were always together, Kenzo would find herself sharing in Bando's inevitable punishment. Guilty by association. As for herself, Kenzo recalls being something of a social butterfly as a kid, but that pretty quickly went away as she became more and more of an antisocial teenager who would largely keep to herself.
There's a lot of love in this world when I was younger. Now there's no love out here.
While growing up in the RPT, Kenzo met the kid who would one day become DThang. At the time, he wasn't the rapper that we know him as today, and he introduced himself to Kenzo in typical boy meets girl fashion by being mean to her. But over the next little while, their relationship would change and they'd become best friends. As DThang's career eventually began to explode, Kenzo had a front seat to watch firsthand as he went from somebody that nobody knew to one of the most famous rappers in the city. It would provide both motivation and something of a blueprint that Kenzo herself could utilize later on. And knowing that his best friend had some real skill behind the mic, once DThang began to take off, he encouraged Kenzo to get in the studio and collaborate with him on a song. But she never did because at the time, Kenzo thought he was playing.
For me, he used to tell me like, cause he knew I could rap, so he used to tell me like, yo, best friend, we need a song. Like get in the studio. You could do that shit. And I always used to just be playing.
A little while later on, when Kenzo was on the brink of finding her own fame thanks to music, DThang would be one of the first people she ever spit her song Bump It to. As for where Kenzo's skill on the mic comes from, well, she's actually been honing her craft for a good long while, and people all around her neighborhood knew her skills because she had constantly been working on them. Not only did she get her start by singing in local talent shows during the 2nd grade, but before her brother Bando started spitting on the mic, Kenzo was rapping first.
That's what's up. And you said your little sister was rapping too, right?
Yeah, she was better than me. My brother was always rapping at the crib.
That's what's up,
yeah. Freestyle.
Now, Kenzo remembers things a little differently. According to her, they both started rapping more or less around the same time, when they were around 8 years old. Dropping bars since 8. You gotta appreciate it. At the time, their older brother had already started rapping himself. Then one day, he put on a background track and told his kid siblings to go hard. While Bando struggled somewhat out of the gate, Kenzo took to freestyling like fish to water. But eventually, she and her older brother became disillusioned with their careers because it didn't go anywhere. Talk about an ambitious 8-year-old.
8, 9 years old, I didn't have no Facebook page, I didn't have no Instagram page, I didn't have no promotion, I just was just making music. So for me, it was like, it was no point.
Okay.
I wasn't on that.
Again, she was only around 10 years old at this point, so I'm not entirely sure what she was expecting, but eventually she stopped taking it seriously. Bando did not, which is why he blew up first. It would take Kenzo a few more years to find her footing. After briefly giving up on her dreams to become a rapper, Kenzo set her sights on finishing school and attending college to major in law with intentions of becoming either a lawyer or her true passion, a detective. Now that's somebody who likes murder mystery podcasts. For good or bad, and let's be honest, it's probably good she'd blow up before that would ever become a reality. On December 12th, 2021, Kenzo finally took the first steps towards becoming the rapper she always knew she could be when she posted a snippet of the song that would become Bump It to her social media. Having been perfecting her craft for so long, when Kenzo began dropping her music, everybody in her hood was ready to support her. Pride that she finally was ready to make her mark.
These girls are better than the bro. Oh my god,
where two they bugging.
These girls are better than
bugging.
And yo, let's get one thing straight. Kenzo may have briefly given up on her dream on becoming a rapper, but she never gave up on practicing to become better. She continued to write and freestyle all throughout her teenage years, and so when she finally came up with Bump It, she knew she had something special. Soon enough, she was shooting her first music video for the single, and upon its release, it would quickly blow up past 1 million views in almost no time at all. Despite her immediate success, Kenzo would remain hungry and keep churning out the hits. Before long, tracks like The Realist and Wish, which literally just dropped a few days ago, would follow. And just like that, Kenzo B had become the newest female face of Bronx drill music. As for where her career takes her from here, well, she's working on a new EP tentatively titled Top Dog.
Is this Kenzo G? My fault. I ain't gonna lie, Kenzo, word of my mother, yo, we have to talk. Like, I ain't gonna lie, like, it's really like, you feel what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot going on, you feel what I'm saying?
But in terms of what comes next, you already know what I'm gonna say. We're just gonna have to wait and see, because this is before they were famous.
So we call you Sha EK or Jiggy Man?
Sha EK, Jiggy Man.
So like,
Goat, whatever you want to
what's the
Coming straight out of the Bronx, rapper Sha EK is the latest in a long line of promising drill artists to have managed to work their way out of one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the world. Or was he really the first? If you've ever seen any of this man's interviews, then you already know that the dude likes to claim that he was the first Bronx-based rapper to really put drill on the map. But how much does this claim rub other artists from his hood the wrong way? What's more, just where the heck did this Jiggy man come from, and how did he get involved in music in the first place? If you already have some idea, tell us in the comment section down below. Otherwise, stay tuned, because today we're going to do our best to answer all those questions and more as we investigate the life and come up of Sha EK on our newest episode of Before They Were Famous. Not unlike many of his peers who have emerged out of the Bronx drill scene, the only moniker that we know Sha EK by is his rap handle. He's kept his government name on the down low. And in terms of his birthday, well, that's pretty hidden too, although we do know for a fact that this young man is 19 years of age. What we also know is that Sha EK has Honduran ancestry and was born and raised in the part of the Bronx known as Cortlandt Projects. More specifically, Melrose Houses.
I'm from Cortlandt, Melrose Houses, where we at right now. I come from the gritty slums. It get lit.
Now, the Bronx has always been a pretty dangerous place, especially to spend your childhood in, and nothing about that has changed over the years. That means as a kid, Sha EK was surrounded by street crime and violence. For a brief period of time, he tried to keep himself busy by practicing his basketball skills, but it wouldn't last. After losing a championship game, he went a little crazy with disappointment, simply abandoning the sport altogether. And with so much activity going on in his hood, he decided to get involved in hustling himself at the age of just 13 years old. From that point forward, violence would follow Sha EK almost everywhere he went. I mean, hell, even as he was on the precipice of blowing up, he'd have to put to bed rumors about he and his sister being attacked together in a drive-by shooting.
You've been shot before, right?
Facts.
And I looked it up, I did my research, it said that it was like 26 shots in 20 seconds. A 9-year-old boy got hit, and I think your sister got hit, they said on the internet.
Nah, yeah, but that was all cap. I got shot a whole year before that. I was in Neil, my sister got shot. That shit was cap.
But you know how the internet and rap beefs go. A little thing like the truth is not going to get in the way of a good story, especially when your ops want to drag your name through the mud. Like, say, fellow Bronx-based rapper DThang, who latched onto the rumor and used it to make Sha EK look weak. Now, why would he do that? Probably because DThang is part of a rival crew known as the YGs, or Young Gunners, who have a whole ton of beef with Sha EK's clique known as the OGs, otherwise known as the Original Goons. These two factions used to be one and the same and ran the Cortlandt Projects together. But when one high-up member in the crew double-crossed someone else, the OGs broke off to stake their own claim in the neighborhood. You can hear DThang rep his crew while dissing all his enemies on the track Talk Facts. Things may have gotten worse between these two before they got better, but DThang was ultimately arrested and booked in November of 2021 on a weapons possession charge, which should have left Sha EK free and clear to continue his ascension. But then he went and got involved in a further beef with his former friends B-Lovee and K-Flock. B-Lovee and Sha EK both grew up together in the Cortland projects. However, it was in fact Sha's friend B-Dot who introduced Sha EK to other associates like Dougie B and K-Flock. At first, these guys were entirely cool with one another. I mean, hell, they even collaborated on a few independent tracks like Back Out the Knocks. Unfortunately, as so often happens, street politics would come between them, and now these former friends are on separate sides, and everybody is keeping a tight lip on exactly why.
Niggas you were weird, man. I just moved on.
Yeah.
I'm going out and throw her.
So there's not really no problems in it.
You know what it is.
And then there's Blockwork, the same artist who appeared with Sha on his breakthrough track D&D. Now, during an interview about a year ago, Sha implied that Blockwork had snitched on one of their own crew, and from that point forward, the feud was on. But there are other persistent rumors that Sha didn't pay Blockwork accordingly for his feature on their hit song. And when Blockwork's manager hopped onto IG Live to claim that Sha was signed to him, Sha fired back by telling everybody that was BS.
Everybody is familiar with him, you feel me? Is doing $1 million every week. He signed to me. You feel me?
How you on live lying? So I'ma just let it keep playing so all the didn't see it. Ain't gonna lie, bro. A lot of is doing funny shit. Y'all not lining up. You're not doing nothing. I don't want niggas commenting, laughing, texting me, none of that. Niggas not my mans. A lot of niggas not my mans. I'm doing nothing. Gangster. I'm Jack K. What am I dad? Know my body. See me? To be on that.
Alright, now that we have a sense of where Sha EK comes from, let's take a look at how he broke free. At the offset of his rap career, Sha EK really didn't take music all that serious. His earliest experiences involved practicing freestyles with his homies like B-Lovee while living on the block. But once Sha EK began to see the bodies pile up around him, and as he lost more and more close friends, he knew he had to find a way to change things so that he didn't wind up the same. That's when his buddy PJ Glizzy took him to the studio, and from that point forward, he never wanted to leave. Before finding any type of real success, Sha would record his earliest tracks under the name Jiggy Man, but none of those songs ever found an audience. Maybe it's because he was relying on a heavily auto-tuned style.
Is your name Jiggy Man G? Yo, bro, that G shit.
Realizing that something wasn't working, Sha would then switch to his regular speaking voice and increased his aggression by, I don't know, let's say 1,000%. Then came the hard-hitting drill bars, and suddenly, people were listening. When Sha EK finally began to explode while wearing his notorious and very orange Montclair coat, he was still in high school, and currently he's in his junior year. Before long, Sha EK would also reclaim the name Jiggy Man by using it in the title of one of his most popular songs, Jiggy Man This, Jiggy Man That. I mean, hell, even his debut album was titled Jiggy on Jiggy. That shit's kinda jiggy. I like that name. And according to a story that he posted on his IG, Sha would sign a music deal around the age of 16, but things quickly turned sour. Luckily for him, a few months later he did receive a big payday by signing a fat new deal, but he hasn't yet revealed who it is he signed to. That being said, we do know that he spent some of that hard-earned cash on a new home for his mom, one located outside of the Bronx because he knows he can't stay there forever. Not with the way he's blowing up. Smart man.
But one thing I do know that you did was say, hey, yo, ma, pack your stuff, we up out of here.
Gangster.
Was that always the thought in your head, yo, when we get, you know, when I catch a bag, that's what we doing?
Facts. My family can't let in no more.
So we out of the Bronx.
Gangster.
Now he's continuing to hone his craft while dropping new music videos damn near every week, with titles like 2 Oppie, in which, yes, Sha EK is still going all in on his ops. And he's also started his own drill label named after his crew, OGE, which stands for Original Goons Entertainment. In other words, despite his success, don't expect Sha EK to change his MO anytime soon. As for the rest of his story, well, you already know the deal. We're just gonna have to wait and see. I mean, after all, this is before they were famous.
Once you kick that door through, you won't hear, I mean, I don't know about everyone else. You're gonna hear drill music for me because that's where I started at. But you're not gonna hear names, none of that.
Teenage rapper Lee Drilly began his hip-hop career with a bang by unleashing the hit track Final Destination back in February of 2021. And from that point forward, his career would explode in an upwards trajectory, and he's been releasing music at a breakneck pace ever since. dropping new singles at least once a month up until news broke earlier this year that he and 19 other associates had been arrested in a citywide sting that was determined to use drill rappers' own music against them. It was reportedly his music video to Bet that acted as the smoking gun to be used against him, and now Lee Drilly has found himself in a whole boatload of trouble. Since the arrest, Lee has been behind bars, and whether or not he'll still have a music career left when he gets out is just one question about his future that's in desperate need of answering. So if you ever wanted to find out how Lee Drilly's past played into his current predicament, then stay tuned to our newest episode of Before They Were Famous to find out. Lee Drilly was born Ali Dobby in the neighborhood of Fordham in the Bronx. His exact age is something of a question mark, and he hasn't ever revealed his birthday to the best of my knowledge. But going off of court documents, he still is a teenager at only 19 years old, meaning he was probably born sometime in 2003. According to a Facebook profile I discovered under his government name, Lee grew up in the Bronx while attending Promise Academy in Central Harlem. After graduating from there, conceivably sometime in the past year or two, Lee would move on to studying at Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, Ohio. Whether that was through in-person learning or remotely online, I'm not exactly sure. But something does tell me that either way, Lee's music career probably put a stop to his time in post-secondary long before his issues with the law ever cropped up. In fact, going by what prosecutors would later accuse him of, Lee very well may have spent more time outside of class than in it. I mean, after all, he was reportedly a member of the Drilly gang. Now, this is a subset of Blood, Sex, Money, Murda, a group responsible for dozens of acts of violence in the areas of East Gun Hill Road, Hull Avenue, and Decatur Avenue in the Big Apple. Lee Drilly likes to say that spending his childhood in these often dangerous streets taught him the importance of loyalty, while also offering him a glimpse at both sides of the world, the good, bad.
There's a lot of good and bad. You feel me?
Both. There's both.
Yeah, it's good that come with it, it's bad that come with it. It's like that everywhere though.
Exactly.
On those rare occasions when Lee had some downtime to spare, he'd show flashes of the artist we'd come to know later by writing poetry for school-based projects, most of which would even get singled out as the very best in the class when he was asked to present it. Now, you may think having talent like that behind the pen would give Lee a leg up when he eventually transitioned into writing his first rap lyrics. But according to him, it never really did. Looking back at it now, he believes that some of his first bars were embarrassingly amateurish and didn't hit nearly as hard as they should have. Now, perhaps because of this, Lee never really considered becoming a rapper, at least not until his good friend Spaz Drilly would find himself locked up. The crew that Lee came to associate himself with was a group created by a bunch of older guys from his hood, who took to calling themselves Drilly, an acronym for Devoted, Resilient, Intelligent, Living Lavish, Young. Prior to hitching his wagon to this collective, Lee's biological father had kicked off a rap career of his own, under the name of Skino DG, which led to Lee flirting with the idea of becoming a rapper himself. And he briefly considered operating under the moniker of Lee Herbo. Guess your boy was a big G Herbo fan. But as soon as he hooked up with this new clique, he took on the moniker of Lee Drilly instead. After his good friend and mentor Spaz Drilly found himself locked up for a murder charge, Lee was looking to make as big of an impact as possible to hold it down for his buddy. So when he stepped into a professional studio for the first time, he was determined to put everyone on blast from the get-go, recording Final Destination, in which he intentionally mentioned as many of his ops as possible to fit into one song. After Final Destination would land Lee Drilly on the hip-hop map in February of 2021, he set to work by spreading the word about his friend's predicament with a couple of singles titled Free Spaz, Parts 1 and 2. He dropped the music videos to those tracks as his first releases on his official YouTube channel, where they'd rack up a combined 1 million streams in the span of just 1 year. Spaz would later hear those tracks from inside a prison cell and encourage Lee to keep churning out more bangers, while keeping his nose clean and out of trouble. Well, at least Lee was able to accomplish one of those things. Looking to follow his friend's advice, Lee barely took any time out from the studio, where he'd go on an absolute tear, recording further hits with titles like Deadly, Public Service Announcement, and even a remix to 50 Cent's Many Men. By the beginning of 2022, Lee Drilly was bigger than ever, collaborating with other artists like E-Woo for songs like No Escape and Bet, the latter of which would wind up coming back to bite Lee in the ass. Big time. Along with a host of other Bronx drill music videos, Lee Drilly's Bet was the primary focus when it came to a developing investigation being undertaken by the NYPD known as Operation Drilly. In April of 2022, the Bronx District Attorney and New York City Police Department released a 4-page, 82-count indictment related to 32 crimes, all of which were aided with the use of music and videos that emerged from the city's thriving drill music scene. These indictments would lead to the arrest of 20 individuals, one of whom was Lee Drilly himself. and he's now facing charges of conspiracy, murder-manslaughter, attempted murder, criminal possession of a weapon, reckless endangerment, assault, attempted assault, and grand larceny. The police believe that all 20 individuals in question are members of the aforementioned Spaz Drilly gang, and that these men took active part in carrying out crimes all throughout the city of New York between September of 2018 and March of this year. For instance, in January of 2019, multiple defendants allegedly surrounded an 18-year-old high school prep student while he was leaving class and attempted to rob him. The victim was severely injured during the attack and was stabbed with a knife, resulting in the need of emergency resuscitation and blood transfusions to save his life. About a year and a half later, in July of 2020, 6 more defendants, all of whom were teenagers at this time, gave chase to a 24-year-old James Rivera. After catching up with him, 4 of the defendants allegedly shot the victim multiple times, while another defendant stabbed him as he fell to the ground. Rivera would not survive the attack. Shortly thereafter, in September of that same year, 2 minor-age defendants were said to have fired shots in a busy commercial area of the city, not far away from the MTA subway station. Despite the potential harm to come to many innocents, thankfully nobody was reported injured. Upon the arrest of these 20-some-odd people, 7 of them were arraigned, while the other 13 were placed in custody to await arraignment. Dougie B, aka Lee Drilly, was one of those 7 individuals who was immediately arraigned. If convicted, it's believed that Drilly could be facing a minimum of 15 to 25 years, and quite possibly life in state prison. Since his arrest, we understandably haven't seen much of this young and talented rapper, but he hasn't disappeared completely. Not only has he provided us with a freestyle over the phone from his prison cell,
shit done changed since I got arrested. I just been staying away from my sentence. Just like, so I gotta respect that. And when I come home, I got deals pending. Like at first I was in here stressing. Felt like the days in here was never ending. But now I know this shit a lesson. Gotta face the place before you get a blessing.
But his people on the outside have dropped the occasional single that he must have stockpiled before all this came on down on top of him, including the recently released and aptly titled Demon Time. Will Lee Drilly find himself a free man once again in the coming days, weeks, or even months? I mean, it's impossible to say for sure, but his predicament is dicey to say the least. I mean, when you're dealing with a sting operation that large, unraveling yourself from it can become an extremely complicated matter. And if the police are as intent as they appear to be to use Lee Drilly's own music against them, well, let's be honest, man, in the span of just 1 year, he sure did give them a lot of ammunition to use. As for how this ultimately shakes out, well, we're just gonna have to keep our eyes peeled. After all, this is before they were famous. Ron Suno is here to stay, and he's ready to prove it. Not only is this talented artist a comedian, but he's basically the big daddy of Bronx drill, being one of the early pioneers for that art form when he was just a teenager. Since then, Ron has been entertaining the masses with his online content through comedy sketches that give everybody a taste of just how loud and hilarious this dude really is. After creating the Weave Challenge at only 17 years old, Ron cemented his place in the entertainment industry and would use that exposure to springboard his hip-hop career with viral tracks like Pinocchio. So did this dude really create the uber popular Bronx drill format? Well, let's investigate to find out on our newest episode of Before They Were Famous. Ron Suno was born Karan Forius in Co-op City, a housing development in the northeast section of the Bronx, New York City, on August 3rd, 2000. He was the youngest of 3 siblings, and his sister China was already 14 when she suddenly found herself with a brand new baby brother. From that point on, she says that she practically raised Ron herself since the age gap between them was so big. Throughout his childhood, Ron grew up with a great sense of humor. Being funny was simply who he was, but as much as he enjoyed making people laugh, Ron also loved creating music. His father had been a rapper early on, which got the ball rolling as far as Ron's own love for music goes, but it would be the entertaining personalities of acts like Trey Songz, 50 Cent, and the early viral sensation Soulja Boy who really inspired Ron the most.
I fuck with Soulja Boy because he reminded me of me. Like, I really create shit like that. Really like set trends. That's why I respect him. Like, if you see the interviews that I did before, that's the thing that I used to look up to, Soulja Boy. But for the most part though, like, I feel like a lot of people don't respect him because how you say it, like, they don't take it serious because they don't understand him. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's how I feel like. Because I'm funny, they don't understand. I really deal with this. I really do this. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Ron's desire to continually be creating and coming up with something new also stemmed from his complete inability to sit still. He told XXL, "When I was in school, every time I was in class, my brain would just never let me do work. I couldn't do work because I was too busy writing songs in class and I was writing too much ideas." Ron simply couldn't turn off his God-given abilities, and many times after being called into the principal's room at Harry S. Truman High School in the Bronx, he'd wind up working his way out of trouble by rapping for his teachers and having them all going crazy in response. Look, working up a crowd is one thing, but being able to manipulate your own teachers out of getting in trouble, I don't know, that's something completely different.
My name is Tyrese, but on the block, niggas call me Tyrone and all that word, beat that ass.
That's nice. Well, can you please tell me about yourself, Tyrese?
I like 10, I'm from the Bronx, and I sell fruit snacks here and there, but that's not something I want to do in a lifetime.
I totally understand.
When he wasn't standing out at school for mostly bad reasons, he was splitting his time on the streets, running around with his classmate and good friend Siri De Niro as part of a group they'd like to call OBHD. Together, they'd roll around with the baddies, participate in basketball events, and eventually hit up the studio with one another. But before music would become a massive part of Ron's life, he dropped out of high school first.
18, dropped out at 18. I went to Truman, I went to Lehman, feel me? Shout out to those schools, you feel me? Gangsta.
Once school was no longer an issue, he found himself inside a studio more regularly, and Ron knew that he had found the place he was meant to be. He started calling himself Ron as an abbreviation of his first name, and as far as Suno goes, well, he says the meaning behind that name will make itself clear in due time. Ready to go with the fresh moniker, at the age of 14, Ron recorded his very first track, a drill song called Murder.
Now the Bronx starting to pick up a little steam. Y'all got K-Flock, B-Lovee. Like, how you feel about y'all starting to pick up in the Bronx now? Like, how's that make you feel since you was the first?
I mean, Bronx doing their thing, you feel me? I feel like with me, I just open the doors for a lot of people to do their thing, you heard? Because at the end of the day, it become like a sauce, you feel me? It's like a recipe. When you cooking, you gotta always have a recipe, you feel me? You can never know how to make a meal without getting a recipe. It gotta come from a source. Like, even if you got a plant, you gotta have the seed.
Now, as far as Ron is concerned, that breadcrumb is more than enough proof that he's the originator of the New York City drill movement, which seems to be quite the controversial topic these days. But at such a young age, Ron was insecure about his craft and convinced that his music wasn't anywhere near the level it should be. As he grew older, he'd spend more and more time in the studio, which helped refine his talent and turn him into a musical dynamo. But before he'd establish himself as a true force in the music industry, he'd make his name as a comedian. By 2017, Ron had still never really held a real job, but he had managed to grow his social media audience by producing a number of comedy skits alongside fellow viral comedy creator Kai Cenat.
Never have I ever smoked weed.
I get high, yeah. Bob Marley. Bob Marley. Yeah, you feel me?
Soon after, Ron came up with an ingenious idea, the Weave Challenge, a viral craze that he hosted on his Instagram profile and utilized to gain more than 500,000 followers in a few short months. That content got his platform buzzing, and that's when Ron decided to drop a bomb on his suddenly growing fan base by releasing a few songs that he knew were good to go: Party on Jump, Ball, and his breakthrough track, Pinocchio, which dropped in October 2019. Pinocchio in particular took the Bronx by storm and did the exact same thing over on TikTok as well, with hundreds of thousands of original videos using it as a part of the Pinocchio challenge.
Hey, that's pretty dope. That's not my favorite Ron Suno song, I ain't gonna lie to you. I guess partly it's because the first time I'm hearing it. Maybe if I hear it another time, I'll with it more. But in my opinion, it's like a 6, 7 out of 10. I ain't gonna lie to you. He can do better. Because I've heard better from him. So, 7 out of 10 in my opinion.
Recognizing that his big moment had finally arrived, Ron wasted no time creating a follow-up single, Spider-Man, in February of 2020, which guest starred none other than Fabio Foreign. By the summer of 2020, Ron was not only releasing a brand new remix of Pinocchio alongside Blueface, but he was also dropping his debut studio album, Swag Like Mike, which was dedicated to a series of world-famous Michaels. You know, I'm talking Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, and Mike Tyson. But I just can't help to think that there is one Michael in particular missing from that list. Sorry, Mr. McCredden, although I do appreciate the job. Thank you. Appreciate it. With a handful of massive songs and a successful new album, Ron partnered with United Masters to drop his sophomore album, Jokes Up, in 2021. And while he might be a little distracted right now by a feud with K-Flock in a recent viral video from Rolling Loud, it's as crazy as it most definitely looks. Ron has come too far and worked too hard not to accomplish his goals, especially now that he has an infant daughter in his life. Some of those intended targets include winning a BET award as well as a Grammy, while also one day landing his own TV show. But now, most importantly, he told Flaunt, "I want my work to change how people are living. I want to make the world a better place. If you follow your happiness, you're always going to be happy regardless of what other people think." With the creation of his own label, SBL, or Stack Beyond Lifestyle, which is also home to Bronx artists like Zay Muna, Siri De Niro, and Smalls SBL, Ron is moving one step closer to achieving exactly that. As for where Ron goes next from here, well, that's a story for another time and another place. After all, this is before they were famous. The hip-hop scene coming out of the Bronx is absolutely on fire right now. Not only are artists releasing singles at breakneck speeds, but they're also gobbling up samples left and right to incorporate into their music. Near the very top of that list is the artist known as B-Lovee, a pioneer of the Bronx drill sound who has quietly built up a large and engaged fan base by appearing on platforms like OVO Sound Radio, while also racking up millions of views on tracks like Spot 'Em and collaborative efforts with his good friend K Flock like Shot Down or Op Spotter. B-Lovee might be on the fast track to success, but did you know that only a few years ago he was slacking and giving up on his rap dream completely? If you want to find out what reawakened his hunger for success, then keep watching our newest episode of Before They Were Famous. Also, if you do want to keep up with all the New York drill rappers, we will be posting bios on Dougie B and DThang later this week, so please be on the lookout for that. Alright, let's get into this video.
I ain't wanted to come out bad. I ain't know like I was gonna come out. But it came out good. Like,
yeah. Was you nervous?
Hell yeah.
In the beginning?
B-Lovee was born Quayshawn Cannon in December of 2000 in the world-famous New York City borough of the Bronx. Love grew up as part of a West Indian family on the south side of the Bronx in the projects, living in what's known as the Andrew Jackson houses, the same part of town where his friends and future rappers K Flock and Dougie B would also grow up. And he also attended James Monroe High School in New York.
So how did you meet K Flocker?
Years ago, before rap, like, for me, my mom used to live on that side of town. Like, I grew up on that side of town, for me, so I know a lot of them, like, for me, Warren Bills, for me, other K Flock, for me, niggas like that. Them niggas, I've been with them for years now.
Despite being able to see the nearby Manhattan skyline from the windows of his family home, Love preferred to stick close to his neighborhood and almost never left its confines during his childhood. As a kid, his only true means of escape from poverty of the ghetto was his passion for music. Back then, he'd listen to acts like Chief Keef, Kodak Black, and Lil Baby, all of whom would play a part in influencing his own eventual style. Once he became a teenager, Love would try rapping for the first time, even going so far to record a song or two. Nicknamed Buddy Love after the Eddie Murphy character from The Nutty Professor, Love would devise these early tracks in sporadic bursts of creativity. But at that still early point in his life, he really wasn't all that interested in uploading his music to SoundCloud or YouTube.
I used to just listen to music a lot. I made a song like a long time ago. I made like 2-3 songs, but then I just never was a real rapper or something.
So you've been like rapping, but you started taking it serious like a year ago.
Yeah.
Why? Well, it probably had something to do with him constantly getting pulled away due to his obligations in the streets. If you've ever given a listen to Love's song Hero, then you know that he considers himself to be his local neighborhood hero.
Do you feel like you're the neighborhood hero?
Yeah.
Do you feel like people look at you in that way?
Yeah, I'm on that mission. Yeah, definitely.
Long before he was a musical success story, everybody who grew up around Love understood that he was going to be somebody special. A lot of his early energy might have been dedicated to hustling on the streets to make a buck, but eventually things would change, especially after the death of his close friend Brandon Hendricks. Brandon grew up alongside Love, but whereas Love decided to stick to the streets, Brandon tried to get out of it by chasing his dreams of becoming a basketball star. Sadly, before he could accomplish his dream and get out of the Bronx by heading off to college, he was gunned down.
What made you, what about being in there kind of made you say to yourself, yo, you know what, let me take this music stuff serious?
Cause the way I went in showed me ain't your mans. Like, you feel what I'm trying to say? Like,
okay.
The way I ended up in that, I could tell, like, this ain't that. Cause I leave you for that, you feel me? You gotta, and then telling me, bro, don't, you feel me, how it happened too. Seeing how, like, oh, I left you for that. I bet, like, for me, that's not it. And you got talent. The music you're making is not whack. Like you're not trying. You making music without trying, and it's better than
that's actually putting their all into it.
Motivated by his friend's passing in 2020, B-Lovee rekindled his passion for music and recorded a track titled No Hook.
I dropped No Hook. Facts. That's around the time I dropped No Hook. For me, after that song, it was like, I just started taking it serious.
He also dropped a hard-nosed music video alongside it that focused on B-Lovee and his crew making their way through their Bronx neighborhood. Once that video began popping off, Love moved quickly to follow it up with a sequel, No Hook Part 2, a track that cleared more than 500,000 views in basically no time at all. With little more than 2 hit songs to his name, B-Lovee was becoming New York City's next big thing. He'd bring his breakthrough year to a close by releasing his debut EP, Cortland Baby, in honor of the projects that raised him. He'd also collaborate with his childhood friends and local rap artists K-Flock and Dougie B on massive hit songs like Brotherly Love, Shot Down, and Speed Racing, all of which would only increase his profile by 1,000-fold.
I saw my little cousin in a casket. I couldn't even breathe. 3 years later, my brother in a casket. I ain't even want to see him go through, you know what I'm saying? Explain that line. Is that like real family members or just friends that you consider family?
Nah, that's real family. Like,
damn.
Real family, like my little cousin, like. For me, tatted on me. For me, from 06 to 16. For me, he didn't even get to see 10.
Wow.
So it's like, for real, my brother too. For me.
Biological brother.
Yeah, my god brother type shit.
Okay,
like,
okay.
For me, lost him. For me, car crash and shit.
Damn.
After a few years spent messing around with rap simply to see what might come of it, Love finally understood that he had accomplished something truly special. So with 2020 and all of the monumental success it brought with it ending, Love decided that in 2021 he'd achieve even greater heights, stating, "My hunger for rap was different last year. Now it's really there." In 2021, Love released If You Know, You Know, a single that sampled a Wayne Wonder classic tune, No Letting Go. Love's new track would quickly become the song of the summer, achieving 5 million streams in a little over a month's time. By September of 2021, the track was appearing on popular Apple Music playlists like The New New York, while also thriving on social media platforms like TikTok and Shazam. You know it's real if you're popping on Shazam. Next, Love would update Egyptian's tune Hold Ya for his hit single Niki. Much like before, his formula proved to be successful, and a few million streams later, Love was signing his first deal with Records, a joint venture between Barry Wise and Sony Music Entertainment that was established in 2015 and is based out of New York City.
For me, like, you know, I got a couple records on there, like Hero, Wonderland, Only One, like certain records that's speaking from like the perspective, like from me, like where you can hear, like it's basically I'm talking to you, for me. So when you listen, it's gonna be like I'm talking to you. So that's why like I made it like so select songs.
As for where B-Lovee goes from here, well, he's apparently already got another 5 songs in the can that he thinks are on the same level as Niki and If You Know, You Know. So be on the lookout for those to drop soon. As for the rest of his story, well, that's for another time and another place. After all, this is before they were famous.
What should I call myself? I call myself. Well, right there, it's like the trend.
Trendsetter?
Trendsetter. You know?
19-year-old rapper Set the Trend is a strong believer that everything happens for a reason. This South Bronx native dedicated himself to his musical journey after recording his very first song, only to then drop multiple music videos that would rack up millions of views in the span of just 1 year. His breakout collaborations with other Bronx drill artists like K-Flock, Dougie B, and C Blu would help him pave a lane while establishing his own unique voice in a corner of the industry that's seemingly becoming more and more oversaturated every day. And Trend did all of this while contending with the tragic loss of his father and a close personal friend. So how has he managed to keep himself on course while going through the ups and downs of living life in the Bronx? And where does he hope his career will take him next? Well, you're about to find out all those answers and more as we embark on the come up of Set the Trend on our newest episode of Before They Were Famous. But before we get started, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications to make sure that you never miss an episode, all that good stuff. And without further ado, let's get right into today's story. Man, mans are stuttering and stuff. My bad. With Set the Trend still being so relatively new to the drill scene, a few of the finer details about his life, like let's say his real name and date of birth, have yet to be uncovered. But that isn't to say that he hasn't spoken on his childhood. During an interview with Audible Treats, Trend would reveal how he used to behave as a kid, telling them, "When I was younger, everything was cool, calm, and collected. growing up on 187th Street in the Bronx as part of a Dominican and Trinidadian family with 4 half-siblings. Trend has suggested that he was a good student who aspired to become a basketball player and didn't start moving in dangerous circles until he got a little bit older, and friends in his age group began making their way towards the streets.
That was a bad kid at first. You know, I was going to school, regular shit, you know. But then I started doing shit. I don't regret out there, actually, to be honest. But for me, I was just doing a little dumb shit. Really young.
Thankfully for Trend, he had nearly as many friends that gravitated towards music, and it was this latter group that Trend came to spend more and more time with in an attempt to get himself booked as a performer by tagging along with other artists to earn some extra cash. At the same time though, the stuff that he was going through in the streets would sabotage his better intentions, and before he knew it, Trend was getting buried under robbery charges that were steadily stacking up against him.
When did you join? You know what I'm saying?
Not too long, bro. Not too long. I've been in for a minute now.
Yeah.
Feel me? Like probably 3 years.
Gotcha.
Seeing the writing on the wall, Trend knew that he had to stop straddling both worlds and pick a lane. So he decided to dedicate himself to becoming the best rapper he could be. He explained the Audible treats. I realized I had a way out through rapping. I felt like I had a gift when I made my first song. Now that very first song is one that's been kept off the internet and hidden away in Trend's vault. And while it may not ever see the light of day, that track that he claims was a love song still inspired a then 16-year-old kid to get his act together. Unfortunately, soon after doing so, tragedy would strike. Just as Trend discovered his life's purpose, he lost something extremely important to him: his father. At 17, Trend's dad, the very individual who taught him how to be a man, passed away after battling diabetes.
Vic was fucked by it. Vic had to chop his toe off.
Yeah,
damn. The shit got to his leg because they cut it off at top. So the shit got to his leg. They had to cut his leg off.
Oh shit.
So did the wheelchair shit. That's where we really got closer and shit. We spoke and shit.
As devastating as a loss as this clearly was, the one silver lining was that it compelled Trend more than ever to provide for his remaining family members. And at this time, he was set on doing so with the help of his music. After releasing tracks like Six Packs, Trendy, and Geeking, Trend made a real impact on the hip-hop scene in 2021 when he teamed up with K-Flock for a couple of singles titled Flame 'Em and Whisper. Far from satisfied, over the next few months, Trend would continue to collaborate with others like Dougie B on EOS, as well as C Blu on No Ozone Parts 1, 2, and 3. Now, as far as his relationship with K-Flock and Dougie B goes, they've actually been friends since childhood, and both of them would play an instrumental role in helping Trend establish himself in the industry. He explained the Audible treats. They used to bring me around label meetings, all that. It created visibility and showed me what's right and wrong. It also taught Trend how to reach for the stars by becoming his most ambitious self. But not wanting to sound like anybody else, Trend would lock himself up in his room, listening to as much music as he can get his hands on, just to make sure that he could alter his voice to sound like something that nobody has ever heard before. In fact, this determination to become one of a kind would prove to be the inspiration of his rap moniker, Set the Trend, after a buddy named Blood Diamond noticed how special he was and dubbed him with that handle. Since taking his earliest steps in the industry, Trend has not only found his name and voice, but he's released a ton of original material on his own, with titles like Change Up, Nevada, and his most popular solo track, Get Home. And the music video to that last one only dropped about 3 or 4 months ago, and it's already amassed over 1 million views on Trend's YouTube channel. And while some of that probably has something to do with having the support of Sony now backing him as a label and getting his name circulating like never before, just as much, if not more, has to do with how honest and open Trend is capable of being with his fans. Something that not every artist can do.
I'm sound already.
Oh, wow. Hold on. Does the world know this, or?
I don't know.
Cause this is news to me. I ain't who you signed to?
I'm Sony.
For instance, the inspiration behind Get Home struck after Trend recently lost one of his closest friends, a fellow rapper who went by the name of Nazi. Soon afterwards, he discovered Faith Evans' 1995 hit, Soon As I Get Home, and recognized that he had stumbled upon the perfect beat to express the difficult situation he was working his way through. Now, Get Home is the kind of track that can inspire others to overcome grief while also spanning both generations and moods. And you know, even though Set the Trend has been a part of several massively popular drill records, he plans on diversifying his sound in the near future. And I mean, the truth is, he doesn't really see himself as a drill rapper. He sees himself as an artist. And if he wants to take his career to the next level, he's more than willing to transcend the boundaries of genre to achieve it. Not that that will be easy, because mind you, Trend is at home, busy raising his son, while also treating Nazi's daughter as if she were his own. It's a real one right there.
So when did you have your son?
I had my son on May.
May?
Yeah, last year.
Oh wow, congrats. Congrats. What's that feeling like being a father?
Yeah, it's good, man. Just knowing that you got something to live for, you know.
Yeah.
That's what keep me driving. That's what keep me driven, you know.
Got you.
His daughter, my kid. Those the youngest us. That was the younger us. So I just gotta keep fighting.
I can only imagine how hectic his life must feel right now as a teenager trying to provide for 2 kids while also establishing himself in the hip-hop industry. But so far, Trend has shown an innate ability to handle every curveball life throws at him, so if he's willing to bet on himself in terms of achieving his goals, I don't see why anybody else should doubt him. Will Set the Trend become one of the biggest rappers to ever emerge out of the Bronx? I mean, it's too soon to tell, but we'll be sure to keep our eyes peeled to find out what happens. I mean, after all, this is before they were famous.